The bullet hit the radio operator's shoulder at 1247 meters, and Elena Vasquez watched through her scope as Commander Brad Mitchell's world collapsed in real time. 3 seconds earlier, Mitchell had dismissed her warning with words that still echoed across the encrypted channel. "Ma'am, with all due respect, we're under control here." Now his team was pinned down, bleeding and dying in a kill box that Elena had predicted 5 minutes ago. She was 55 years old. They thought she was a political hire. They were about to learn what 28 years of classified kills actually looked like when an old woman decided young men's egos weren't worth American lives. Before we dive into this story, hit that subscribe button and stick with me until the end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let's get into it. Elena Vasquez had killed her first enemy combatant at 23. Now at 55, she'd lost count somewhere past 200, and the young Navy SEAL standing in front of her had the audacity to explain modern warfare like she'd learned combat tactics from a history book. "The advisory role is pretty straightforward, ma'am," Commander Brad Mitchell said, his tone carrying that particular blend of professional courtesy and thinly veiled condescension that Elena had learned to recognize instantly. "You'll observe from the Tactical Operations Center, provide input if requested, and your presence satisfies the State Department requirement for military contractor oversight on cross-border operations." Elena said nothing, just nodded once. Let him keep talking. They were standing in a prefabricated operations building on the Ukrainian border, 40 kilometers from where Mitchell's SEAL team would insert in 6 hours. The mission brief had taken 20 minutes. Mitchell had spent 15 of them carefully avoiding eye contact with Elena, directing all his tactical explanations to the male contractors standing behind her. "The terrain is fairly straightforward," Mitchell continued, pulling up satellite imagery on the display screen. "Rolling hills, minimal vegetation this time of year. Good visibility for the most part. We'll maintain communications protocols throughout the operation, regular check-ins every 30 minutes. "The ridgeline," Elena said quietly. Mitchell stopped mid-sentence. "Ma'am, the eastern ridgeline. You're planning to cross through that valley system at dawn." "Yes, ma'am. Standard approach minimizes our exposure time." Elena stood and walked to the display, her movements unhurried. She traced a line along the ridgeline with one finger. "That's a natural ambush position. High ground, clear fields of fire into the valley, multiple covered approaches from the reverse slope. If anyone knows you're coming, that's where they'll wait." Mitchell's jaw tightened slightly. "Ma'am, our intelligence assessment indicates minimal enemy presence in that sector. Local militia units, poorly trained, inadequate equipment. Nothing that poses a significant threat to a SEAL element." "Your intelligence assessment is 3 days old. It's the most current data available." "Then your most current data is going to get someone killed." The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Mitchell's executive officer, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, shifted uncomfortably. The 2 other SEALs in the briefing room exchanged glances. Mitchell's voice remained professional, but Elena heard the steel underneath. "Ma'am, I appreciate your experience, but special operations threat assessment protocols have evolved significantly over the past decade. We're incorporating real-time intelligence feeds, predictive modeling, and multi-source verification that frankly didn't exist during your active service period." Elena smiled then, not pleasantly. "You're right, Commander. During my active service period, we didn't have predictive modeling. We had something called survival instinct, which we developed by not dying when we encountered prepared ambush positions in terrain that looked exactly like what I'm seeing on your screen. With respect, ma'am. How many combat insertions have you commanded, Commander?" Mitchell hesitated. "Classified number, ma'am, but extensive experience across multiple theaters." "I'll take that as somewhere between 5 and 10. I commanded 47. Direct action raids, reconnaissance operations, high-value target captures. 47 times I put teams into hostile territory and brought them home alive." "That's impressive, ma'am, but I'm 55 years old and therefore my experience is obsolete." Elena's voice remained calm, almost gentle. "That's what you're thinking. Don't deny it. I can see it on your face. You're wondering why State Department insisted on my presence, figuring it's some diversity initiative, thinking I'm here because someone felt guilty about not having enough women in contractor positions." Mitchell said nothing, which was answer enough. "You know what I was doing 20 years ago, Commander," Elena continued. I was lying in a valley that looked exactly like the one on your screen, watching my team get torn apart by machine gun fire from a ridgeline I'd warned them about. My team leader, young guy about your age, lots of confidence, he'd told me I was being paranoid. Said the intelligence assessment showed minimal threat. She paused, letting that sink in. 4 men died that day because someone decided experience was less valuable than current intelligence. I survived by crawling 800 meters through hostile fire with a shattered femur and then spending the next 6 hours providing precision fire support while waiting for extraction. Killed 17 enemy fighters from a position they never located. Would have been 0 casualties if someone had listened to the paranoid woman who'd survived 3 previous ambushes and knew what the terrain was telling her. The room was completely silent now. So, here's what's going to happen, Commander. You're going to proceed with your mission exactly as planned, because that's your right as the operational commander. And I'm going to position myself 3,000 meters from your insertion point with the equipment I brought, because that's my right as the oversight contractor. And when everything goes to hell on that ridgeline, you're going to remember this conversation and wonder why you confused youth with wisdom. Elena turned and walked toward the door. One more thing, she said without looking back. The advisory role, I'm not here because State Department needs oversight. I'm here because 3 senators received intelligence that this operation is compromised, that enemy forces know you're coming, and they wanted someone with actual combat experience positioned to unfuck the situation when your predictive modeling fails. Have a good insert, Commander. She left them standing there in shocked silence. 6 hours later, Elena was belly down in frozen mud on a hillside overlooking the valley system where Mitchell's team would be transiting. The position gave her clear observation of both the valley floor and the eastern ridgeline she'd identified during the briefing. Her equipment was spread around her in careful organization. The Mk-13 rifle that had been her companion through 19 countries and countless operations. Rangefinder, spotting scope, communications gear, medical supplies, ammunition. Everything she might need if her paranoia turned out to be justified. The cold seeped through her thermal layers despite the insulation. At 25, she wouldn't have noticed. At 55, her joints complained with every micro-adjustment of position. Getting old was hell on the body, but it did wonders for situational awareness. Young operators trusted their training. Old operators trusted their scars. The radio crackled to life. Mitchell's voice, professional and controlled. TOC, this is SEAL 1. We're 15 minutes from crossing phase line Alpha. All elements report ready, no contacts. Elena keyed her own radio using the separate frequency that connected her directly to the Tactical Operations Center. TOC, this is Guardian. I'm in Overwatch position. SEAL 1 is proceeding as planned. Copy, Guardian. Maintain observation and report any developments. Elena returned to her spotting scope, systematically scanning the ridgeline. Nothing yet. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe 28 years of paranoia had finally caught up with her judgment. Maybe movement. So subtle she almost missed it. She shifted the scope, refined the focus, and felt ice crystallize in her stomach. Figures on the ridgeline, moving with tactical discipline, setting up positions with professional precision, heavy weapons being emplaced with careful attention to overlapping fields of fire. Elena counted. 8, 12, 16, 20. This wasn't a militia patrol. This was a prepared ambush position being occupied by fighters who knew exactly what they were doing. She keyed the command frequency. SEAL 1, this is Guardian. Abort your approach. You have hostile forces occupying prepared positions on the eastern ridgeline, approximately 20 personnel with crew-served weapons. This is a deliberate ambush. I say again, abort your approach. Mitchell's response came back immediately, tension underlying his professional tone. Guardian, what's your confidence level on that assessment? We have 0 intelligence indicating enemy presence in this sector. Commander, I'm looking at them right now through a spotting scope. They're setting up machine guns and RPG positions with clear fire lanes into the valley. This is not speculation. This is direct observation. A pause. Elena could almost hear the mental calculations happening on the other end. Guardian, we're 5 minutes from phase line Alpha. Are you certain this isn't a friendly unit? Local security forces sometimes patrol this area. Elena watched through her scope as an RPG team selected their firing position, testing angles of fire into the valley below. Commander, unless your friendly local security forces routinely establish ambush positions with Russian-pattern heavy weapons, I'm certain these are hostiles. You need to abort or alter your route. Now. Another pause. Longer this time. When Mitchell's voice came back, Elena heard something she'd been expecting. The stubborn certainty of a young commander who didn't want to abort a mission based on the word of someone he didn't fully trust. Guardian TOC. We're adjusting our route to provide better standoff distance from the ridgeline, but we're proceeding with the mission. Intelligence assessment remains valid. Possible you're observing a patrol element that will move through the area. Elena closed her eyes briefly. There it was. The decision that would get people killed. Commander, they're not moving through, they're digging in. This is a planned ambush position, and you're walking into it. Noted Guardian. We're proceeding. Seal 1 out. The radio went silent. Elena methodically began adjusting her equipment, transitioning from observation mode to engagement preparation. She ranged the ridgeline, 2,200 meters, extreme distance, but within capability of the Mk-13. Wind was gusting unpredictably. Temperature was well below freezing, affecting ballistics. The angle was steep, complicating the mathematics. But math was just math. And Elena had been solving these problems since before Commander Brad Mitchell learned to shave. Through the spotting scope, she watched Mitchell's team emerge from the tree line and begin crossing the valley floor. 4 operators moving in tactical formation. Professional, competent, completely unaware they were entering a kill box. The ambush force on the ridgeline shifted. Weapons came up. Commanders positioned their people. The discipline was impressive. They waited, letting the Americans move deeper into the zone. Elena ranged the SEAL element. 800 meters from her position. 2,200 meters from the ambush line. She keyed the radio one last time. SEAL 1 Guardian. They're tracking you. They've got weapons on you. Get to cover, now. Mitchell's voice came back clipped. Guardian, we're under control. Maintain observation. The first shot cracked across the valley before he finished the sentence. Through the scope, Elena saw Lieutenant Webb spin and go down his left leg, collapsing. Not a kill shot. A deliberate wounding to immobilize and pin the team. Then the world exploded. Machine gun fire raked the valley floor from 3 positions. RPGs streaked through the air, detonating against rocks. The precision of the fire told Elena everything she needed to know. These weren't militia. These were professional soldiers executing a rehearsed ambush. Mitchell's voice on the radio no longer controlled. Contact. Contact. We're taking effective fire from the ridgeline. Webb is down. The 3 remaining SEALs scrambled for whatever cover existed in terrain that offered precious little. Petty Officer James Costa dragged Webb behind an outcropping that wouldn't stop sustained fire. Mitchell and Chief Ryan Torres tried to return fire, but the range was too great for their carbines to be effective. Elena assessed in seconds. The ambush force held all advantages: position, weapons, numbers. The SEAL team was pinned in a killing zone with 1 casualty, inadequate cover, and no way to effectively suppress the enemy fire. Standard protocol said Elena should maintain position and call for support. Quick reaction force, air support, artillery if available. But the QRF was 40 minutes out. Air support was grounded due to deteriorating weather. Artillery wasn't authorized this close to the border. Mitchell's team had maybe 5 minutes before the ambush force either maneuvered to better positions or simply sustained fire until everyone was dead. Elena made her decision. She transitioned to the Mk-13, acquiring the first target. A machine gunner whose sustained fire was keeping the Americans completely pinned. Range 247 meters. Wind gusting 815 mph from the northwest. Temperature -18 Celsius. Upward angle 23 degrees. She made the calculations by feel, by experience, by muscle memory developed through thousands of shots in dozens of countries. Her finger found the trigger. She controlled her breathing, found that moment between heartbeats where everything was still. The rifle cracked. Through the scope, she watched the machine gunner jerk backward and disappear from his position. She worked the bolt, chambered another round, acquired the second target. RPG gunner preparing to fire. Another shot. The gunner tumbled down the slope, weapon falling free. Elena keyed the radio. SEAL 1, this is Guardian. I'm engaging the ambush force at extreme range. I've eliminated their primary machine gun and one RPG team. Get to better cover, now. Mitchell's voice came back strained and shocked. Guardian, what the hell are you doing? That's over 2,000 meters. How are you? Save the questions for later. Commander, 3rd machine gun, you're 11 o'clock behind the large boulder. He's going to shift position in about 10 seconds. When he moves, you move. Understand? Yes, copy. Elena acquired the 3rd target. Waited. The gunner shifted exactly when she predicted. She fired. The gunner dropped. Move, she transmitted. Mitchell's team scrambled, covering 50 meters to a better position, while Elena systematically eliminated threats. 4th target, 5th, 6th. The ambush force was in chaos now. They'd expected helpless targets. Instead, they were being destroyed by precision fire from a position they couldn't identify at a range they couldn't believe. But there were still too many of them, and Elena was burning through ammunition faster than ideal. SEAL 1, I've suppressed the immediate threats, but you've got at least 12 hostiles still combat effective on that ridgeline. Can you move to an extraction point? Negative, Mitchell shouted over sustained fire. Webb's hit bad femoral artery, bleeding. We've got tourniquet on it, but he can't move. We're pinned here. Elena watched through the scope as the hostile force began to reorganize. Smart commander. He was repositioning his people, preparing to resume the ambush from new angles that would bypass the killing zone Elena had created. They had maybe 3 minutes before the fire resumed and Mitchell's team was destroyed. Elena looked at the distance. 800 meters to the SEAL position. Difficult terrain. She was 55 years old, with knees that hurt in cold weather and a back that still ached from injuries sustained decades ago. But Webb was bleeding out. Mitchell's team was pinned, and 28 years of classified operations had taught Elena one fundamental truth. Sometimes the only way to win was to do something impossible. She secured the Mk-13 across her back, brought her M4 carbine to ready position, and started moving. The terrain was brutal. Frozen mud, loose rocks, steep inclines. At 25, she could have covered the distance in 8 minutes. At 55, every step hurt. She didn't care. SEAL 1, I'm moving to your position. Give me 10 minutes. Keep Webb alive and keep your heads down. There was a long pause before Mitchell responded. Guardian, did you just say you're moving to our position? Guardian snipers maintain distance. You're supposed to provide long-range support. Not. Commander, I'm 55 years old. I've got arthritis in both knees, and I'm carrying 40 pounds of gear across hostile terrain. I'm not interested in discussing protocols. I'm interested in getting your people home alive. Webb's bleeding. You're pinned. I'm the only support you've got. Do you want to argue theory, or do you want to live? Another pause. How long since you ran 800 meters with full kit, ma'am? About 20 years. Guess we'll find out if I've still got it. Elena moved. Not running her knees wouldn't survive that, but a ground-eating tactical pace that covered distance while maintaining awareness. The hostile force was focused on Mitchell's position. Nobody was watching for a lone operator approaching from an entirely different angle. That was their mistake. 5 minutes into her movement, Elena heard the ambush force resume firing. Mitchell's team returning fire, but outgunned and desperate. She pushed harder, ignoring the burning in her legs, the pain in her back, the fact that her body was demanding to know what the hell she thought she was doing. 7 minutes. She was 300 meters from Mitchell's position now, approaching from the flank. The hostile force was between her and the SEALs, focused entirely on the valley floor. Elena transitioned to a shallow ravine that provided cover and concealment. She moved into position, breathing hard but steady, and assessed the tactical situation. 12 hostile fighters visible from her position, focused on maintaining suppressive fire into Mitchell's location. They had no idea she was behind them at 300 meters with a rifle and extremely unfriendly intentions. She keyed the radio one more time. SEAL 1, I'm 300 meters west of your position behind the hostile line. When I start shooting, suppress anything that moves on that ridgeline. Clear. Mitchell's voice was tight. Guardian, you're behind them. How did you? Commander questions later. Shooting now. Stay down. Elena acquired her first target. Center mass shot at 300 meters. Easy. She fired. The hostile fighter dropped. Before his body hit the ground, Elena was tracking to the second target. Fired. Third target. Fired. The ambush force realized too late that they were no longer the hunters. They were the prey. And Elena Vasquez, 55 years old with aching joints and 2 decades of scars, was very, very good at hunting. She moved and fired, using the terrain and the confusion to stay ahead of their response. When they tried to shift position, she killed them. When they tried to return fire, she was already gone, engaging from a new angle. This wasn't precision long-range shooting. This was close-quarters combat, aggressive and brutal and personal. This was what Elena had done in places whose names were still classified in operations that officially never happened, in the kind of fighting that didn't appear in training manuals. Mitchell's team added their fire, now catching the hostile force in a crossfire between Elena's position and their own. The ambush collapsed in less than 3 minutes. When the shooting stopped, 12 enemy fighters were dead or dying. The survivors were running, abandoning equipment and positions in panic-driven retreat. Elena stood up slowly, her knees screaming protest, and walked into Mitchell's position. 4 SEALs stared at her like she was a ghost. Webb was conscious, pale from blood loss, but stable with the tourniquet holding. Costa was bleeding from shrapnel wounds, but functional. Mitchell and Torres were uninjured, but looked shell-shocked. Guardian, Mitchell said quietly. Elena. Save it, Commander. Elena knelt next to Webb, checking his tourniquet with experienced hands. Your femoral's torn, but the tourniquet's good. You'll keep the leg if we get you evacuated in the next hour. She stood, pulled out her radio, and called for extraction on the command frequency. TOC, this is Guardian. SEAL 1 element is combat effective with 1 urgent surgical and 1 priority casualties. We've neutralized the hostile force. Request immediate case evac to our position. Transmitting coordinates now. She switched frequencies and looked at Mitchell. Your team performed well under fire, Commander. Good discipline, good fire control, nobody panicked. Webb's going to be fine. Costa's wounds are superficial. You all get to go home. Mitchell just stared at her. You were right, he finally said. About everything. The ambush. The intelligence. I should have listened. I almost got my people killed because you're 32 years old and you've been taught that current intelligence and modern technology are more valuable than experience. Elena interrupted. You're not the first commander to learn that lesson the hard way. You just got lucky that someone old and paranoid was watching. How did you do that? Torres asked. The shooting. Moving to our position. You took on 12 fighters by yourself and made it look easy. Elena smiled tiredly. Chief, nothing about that was easy. I'm going to hurt for a week. But you want to know the secret? I've been doing this longer than you've been alive. I've survived situations that would have killed me if I hadn't learned from previous situations that almost killed me. Experience isn't about being stronger or faster. It's about having already been through the nightmare and knowing how to navigate it. The sound of helicopters approached in the distance. That's your ride, Elena said. Get Webb on that bird. Get Costa checked out. File your after-action report honestly, Commander. Don't protect me. Tell them exactly what happened. What about you? Mitchell asked. I've got my own transportation, and I've got about 15 senators who are going to want a very detailed conversation about how the intelligence assessment was wrong and the paranoid old woman was right. The helicopters landed in a storm of rotor wash. Navy corpsmen rushed forward to evacuate Webb and Costa. Before Mitchell boarded, he turned to Elena one more time. Thank you. For my team. For not giving up on us, even when I was an arrogant asshole who didn't listen. Elena's expression softened slightly. Commander, you're a good officer who made a bad call based on inadequate information. Learn from it. Next time someone with experience tells you something feels wrong, maybe trust the experience. Yes, ma'am, I will. He climbed aboard the helicopter. Elena stood in the valley alone again, watching the birds disappear into the gray sky. Her knees hurt. Her back hurt. Everything hurt. But Mitchell's team was alive. Webb would keep his leg. Nobody was getting a folded flag delivered to their family. That was enough. She picked up her rifle and started the long walk back to her observation position to collect her gear. Somewhere in the distance, she heard more helicopters approaching. Probably a quick reaction force responding to the contact report. They'd secure the area, collect intelligence, debrief everyone. Elena didn't wait for them. She had what she needed: confirmation that 28 years of paranoia and scar tissue still counted for something in a world that preferred youth and technology to experience and wisdom. She keyed her radio one last time. TOC, this is Guardian. Mission complete. Returning to base. Tell State Department their oversight contractor says the intelligence assessment protocols need revision. Guardian out. Elena switched off the radio and kept walking alone with her thoughts and her rifle and the certain knowledge that somewhere someone else would learn the same lesson Mitchell had learned today. She just hoped they'd survive the education. The debriefing started 3 hours after Elena returned to base, and she knew within the first 5 minutes that someone was already trying to bury what had happened in that valley. The officer conducting the interview was Colonel Raymond Foster, 48 years old, career intelligence officer, who'd spent more time in briefing rooms than combat zones. He sat across from Elena in a windowless office that smelled like stale coffee and bureaucratic anxiety, reading from a tablet with the kind of careful neutrality that always preceded an accusation. So let me make sure I understand correctly, Ms. Vasquez, Foster said, emphasizing the civilian title in a way that made it sound like an insult. You abandoned your assigned observation position, engaged hostile forces at extreme range without authorization, then conducted a solo assault on an entrenched enemy position, all while operating as an advisory contractor with no command authority whatsoever. Elena met his eyes without blinking. I prevented 4 American deaths. That's what I did, Colonel. You can dress it up in whatever terminology makes you comfortable, but the result is the same. 4 SEALs went home alive instead of in body bags. That's not the question. That's the only question that matters. Foster set down the tablet with deliberate care. Ms. Vasquez, you violated your contract parameters, exceeded your authority, and engaged in unauthorized combat operations on foreign soil. The fact that the outcome was positive doesn't change the fact that your actions created significant diplomatic complications. Diplomatic complications. Elena's voice was flat. Is that what we're calling dead Americans now? Commander Mitchell's team was operating under approved rules of engagement with appropriate support protocols. Your assessment that they were in immediate danger was correct, demonstrably, provably correct. 12 dead enemy fighters and 0 dead Americans is all the proof anyone should need. Foster leaned forward. The intelligence assessment for that operation went through 3 levels of review. Satellite imagery signals, intelligence. Human intelligence sources all indicated minimal enemy presence. Your claim that you identified an ambush force contradicts every piece of data we had. Then your data was wrong. Or your interpretation was influenced by confirmation bias stemming from your previous combat experience. Elena felt something cold settle in her chest. There it was, the real accusation underneath all the bureaucratic language. You think I imagined the ambush because of PTSD from my own experience 20 years ago? Foster's expression didn't change. I think it's worth considering that your threat assessment may have been colored by previous trauma. It's well documented that operators who've survived ambush situations sometimes develop hypervigilance that can lead to false positive identifications. The enemy fighters I killed weren't false positives, Colonel. They were very real. Ask Commander Mitchell if you don't believe me. We have asked Commander Mitchell. His report is problematic. Elena waited, saying nothing. Foster pulled up another document on his tablet. Mitchell states, and I quote, Guardian contractor Elena Vasquez provided accurate threat warning that potentially saved American lives. Her subsequent actions, while outside normal advisory protocols, were justified by the immediate tactical situation. Without her intervention, casualties would likely have been catastrophic. End quote. Sounds like he wrote an honest assessment. He wrote an assessment that contradicts official intelligence and makes his own command decisions look questionable. If your threat assessment was accurate, it means Mitchell ignored valid warnings and led his team into an ambush. That's a career-ending mistake for a SEAL commander. So you'd prefer I was wrong Elena's voice remained steady, but anger was building underneath. You'd prefer my threat assessment was paranoid delusion, so Mitchell's reputation stays clean, and nobody has to explain how intelligence failed. I'd prefer the truth. The truth is inconvenient for you, Colonel. The truth is that 3 senators received intelligence suggesting this operation was compromised. The truth is that you sent a SEAL team into hostile territory with bad information. The truth is that a 55-year-old woman saved your ass by doing the job nobody else was willing to do. Foster's jaw tightened. Your age is not relevant to this discussion. The hell it isn't. You know what Mitchell said to me before the operation? He explained modern warfare like I learned combat tactics from a museum display. You know why? Because I'm old enough to be his mother, and nobody in special operations believes women over 50 have anything valuable to contribute. That's not... Yes, it is. You sat there for the first 10 minutes of this debriefing calling me Ms. Vasquez instead of using my retired rank. You want to know why? Because acknowledging I'm a retired master sergeant with 28 years of classified operations would mean acknowledging that my experience might actually be more valuable than your satellite imagery. Foster set down his tablet again. When he spoke, his voice was colder. Fine. Master Sergeant Vasquez, let's discuss your experience. Your service record shows 47 combat operations over a 28-year career. Impressive. It also shows that you were medically retired following severe injuries sustained during an operation in Afghanistan. Injuries that included traumatic brain injury, shattered femur, and documented PTSD symptoms, including hypervigilance and threat overassessment. Elena's hands tightened on the armrests of her chair, but her voice remained level. I was injured saving 12 people from an ambush that killed 4 others. The PTSD is managed. The injuries are healed. My threat assessment capabilities are intact. Are they? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you took an advisory contract, immediately identified an ambush situation that matched your previous trauma, and responded by engaging in unauthorized combat operations that could have created an international incident. Could have created Colonel I killed 12 enemy fighters on foreign soil during an operation that prevented American casualties. The only incident that exists is in your imagination because you're more worried about paperwork than bodies. The door opened before Foster could respond. A woman entered late 50s civilian clothes, but carrying herself with unmistakable authority. Elena recognized her type immediately. Intelligence community. Senior level. Someone who actually made decisions instead of just implementing them. Colonel Foster, I'll take it from here, the woman said. Foster stood immediately. Ma'am, the debriefing isn't complete. I still need to... You need to leave. Now. Foster gathered his tablet and left without another word. The woman waited until the door closed before sitting down across from Elena. I'm Patricia Morse, she said simply. Deputy Director of Operations Defense Intelligence Agency. And before you ask, yes, I'm the one who insisted you be assigned to Mitchell's operation. Elena studied her carefully. The 3 senators, among others. We received intelligence suggesting Mitchell's operation was compromised. Satellite imagery showed unusual activity along that border sector. Signals intelligence picked up chatter that matched pre-ambush communication patterns. But the official threat assessment downgraded everything because it didn't fit expected patterns for militia activity in that region. So you knew Mitchell was walking into an ambush. We suspected it strongly enough that I wanted someone with actual combat experience positioned to intervene if things went wrong. Someone who wouldn't hesitate to act if the situation demanded it. You used me as insurance. I used you as what you are one of the most experienced combat operators we have available, and you performed exactly as expected. 4 Americans are alive because you were there. Elena leaned back in her chair, reassessing. Why are you telling me this? Why not just let Foster complete his investigation and file whatever report protects everyone's career? Morse's expression was unreadable. Because Foster's investigation is designed to determine whether your actions were justified or symptomatic of PTSD-driven threat overassessment. And depending on how that investigation concludes, either you become a contractor who saved American lives, or you become a liability who can't distinguish between real threats and trauma-induced paranoia. Which conclusion do you want? I want the truth, and I want to understand why intelligence failed so completely that we needed a 55-year-old retired operator to prevent a catastrophe. Elena met her eyes directly. You want the truth. Your intelligence didn't fail. It was deliberately manipulated. That ambush was professional. Prepared positions, coordinated fire, Russian pattern weapons. Those weren't local militia. Those were trained soldiers who knew exactly where Mitchell's team would be and exactly when they'd arrive. Morse said nothing, but something shifted in her expression. Someone fed you bad intelligence, Elena continued. Someone wanted Mitchell's team in that valley. And when I showed up as your insurance policy, someone hoped I'd be dismissed as a paranoid old woman instead of believed as an experienced operator. You're suggesting deliberate compromise. I'm stating facts. The only question is whether you're willing to hear them or whether you'd prefer I disappear quietly so nobody has to explain how thoroughly your systems failed. Morse stood up and walked to the door. For a moment, Elena thought the interview was over. Then Morse turned back. Mitchell is being recalled to Virginia for debriefing tomorrow. His executive officer and team are being interviewed separately. The enemy fighters you killed are being processed through forensic analysis. Within 48 hours, I'll know if your assessment about deliberate compromise is accurate. And then what? Then I decide whether to pursue an investigation that could expose systemic failures in our intelligence apparatus, or whether to conclude that you acted appropriately under circumstances that were simply unfortunate. Elena stood as well. In other words, you decide whether to bury this or fight it. I decide whether the fight is worth the cost. Morse opened the door. You're confined to base pending completion of the investigation. That's non-negotiable. But unlike Colonel Foster, I'm not interested in questioning your mental fitness or second-guessing your combat assessment. I'm interested in finding out who wanted Americans dead and why your presence prevented it. She left Elena standing alone in the office, mind racing through implications and possibilities. The base housing they assigned Elena was standard contractor quarters, small room, basic furniture, internet connection, monitored by base security. She'd been in worse prisons. At least this one had decent coffee. She was reviewing her own mission logs when someone knocked on the door 3 hours later. Elena opened it to find Commander Mitchell standing there in fresh utilities, looking like he hadn't slept since the ambush. Commander, Elena said, you're supposed to be en route to Virginia for debriefing. Flight's in 4 hours. Wanted to talk to you first. Elena stepped aside to let him enter. Mitchell walked in, looked around the sparse quarters, and sat down without invitation. Elena poured 2 cups of coffee and handed him one. You look like hell, she said. Webb's stable. Costa's fine. Torres and I are uninjured. That's what matters. Then what's bothering you? Mitchell took a long drink of coffee before answering. I've been replaying the briefing in my head. What you said about the ridgeline, about intelligence assessment, about me treating you like you didn't know what you were talking about. You made a judgment call based on available information. I made a judgment call based on pride. You told me exactly what was going to happen, and I dismissed you because you're a 55-year-old woman and I'm a 32-year-old SEAL commander who thought he knew better. Elena sat down across from him. Commander Brad. If you saved my life, you can use my first name. Brad, you're a good officer who made a mistake. You'll learn from it. That's how this works. Is it? Mitchell's voice was tight. Because from what I'm hearing, the official investigation is trying to determine if you were right or if you were just lucky. And if they conclude you were lucky, then my report saying you saved our lives becomes evidence that I panicked and made poor decisions under fire. Elena's eyes narrowed. Who told you that? Torres overheard some officers talking. Said Foster is building a case that you acted inappropriately, that the ambush might not have been as organized as you claimed, that your combat experience made you interpret a militia patrol as a professional military operation. Foster's trying to protect the intelligence assessment by destroying your credibility and mine. Mitchell set down his coffee cup hard enough that liquid splashed. Webb almost died. Costa took shrapnel. We were 30 seconds from being overrun when you showed up, and now they're trying to rewrite it as if you overreacted. That's how bureaucracies work, Brad. They protect systems, not people. Then the system is broken. The system has always been broken. You're just now seeing it because you're caught in it. Mitchell stood up and started pacing. I'm being recalled for debriefing tomorrow. They're going to ask me to clarify my after-action report, soften the language, acknowledge that threat assessment is subjective, admit that what looked like a professional ambush might have been local fighters getting lucky. Are you going to do it? Hell no. You saved my team. I'm not going to repay that by helping them bury the truth. Elena smiled slightly. That's good to hear. But you need to understand what you're risking. If you defend me, you're contradicting official intelligence assessment. That puts your career in jeopardy. My career? Mitchell stopped pacing and looked at her directly. Elena, I'm 32 years old. I've got 20 more years of service ahead of me if I want them. You're 55. You're retired. You took a contractor position and risked everything to save people you didn't know. And now they're trying to destroy your reputation to cover their own failures. If I don't stand up for you now, then what the hell am I doing wearing this uniform? The conviction in his voice surprised Elena. She'd expected defense, maybe gratitude. But not this kind of fierce loyalty from someone she'd met 24 hours ago. You're a good man, Brad. Your team is lucky to have you. My team is alive because of you. Before Elena could respond, her phone buzzed. She checked it and felt her pulse spike. What is it? Mitchell asked. Message from Patricia Morse, DIA Deputy Director. She wants to see me immediately. That's good, right? She's senior enough to override Foster. Or senior enough to bury this more effectively. Elena stood. You should go catch your flight. Say what you need to say in Virginia. Tell the truth. Let the chips fall where they fall. Mitchell moved toward the door, then stopped. When this is over, when they finish trying to decide if you're a hero or a liability, I want you to come meet my team properly. Not on a mission, just dinner, beer, stories. You earned that. I'll think about it. After he left, Elena sat in the quiet room for several minutes, thinking through possibilities and probabilities. Then she grabbed her jacket and headed toward the intelligence building where Morse was waiting. Patricia Morse's temporary office was 3 floors up in a section of the base that required additional security clearance. Elena showed her credentials twice before being escorted into a room where Morse sat surrounded by laptops, documents, and the unmistakable chaos of an active investigation. Sit, Morse said without looking up from a laptop screen, and tell me about Operation Sandstorm. Elena felt ice slide down her spine. That's classified at levels I can't discuss. I've got TSSCI clearance and approval from 3 different agencies. Talk. Elena sat slowly. Operation Sandstorm was 20 years ago, Afghanistan. Classified operation targeting a high-value individual. What does that have to do with? It has everything to do with what happened in that valley yesterday. Morse finally looked up. Operation Sandstorm, June 2005. Your team inserted to capture or kill a Taliban commander who'd been coordinating attacks on American forces. Intelligence assessment indicated minimal security presence. You questioned the assessment based on terrain analysis. Your team leader overrode your concerns. You walked into a prepared ambush. 4 dead, including your team leader. You survived with severe injuries after providing covering fire for extraction. I'm aware of my own history. Are you aware that the intelligence failure in Operation Sandstorm was later attributed to a compromised source that someone deliberately fed bad information to ensure American forces would walk into an ambush? Elena went very still. I was never briefed on that conclusion, because the investigation was classified and buried. The compromised source was a Pakistani intelligence officer who'd been recruited by Taliban leadership. He provided accurate intelligence 95% of the time to build trust, then provided fatal intelligence when it mattered most. 4 Americans died before we identified the compromise. Why are you telling me this now? Morse turned a laptop around so Elena could see the screen. Satellite imagery, signals intelligence transcripts, movement patterns, the data that had supposedly cleared Mitchell's operation. Because the intelligence failure that sent Mitchell's team into that valley shows the exact same pattern as Operation Sandstorm. Accurate intelligence 95% of the time. Then suddenly fatal intelligence at the critical moment. Someone is running the same playbook. Elena stared at the screen pieces clicking together in her mind. You think someone inside our intelligence apparatus is deliberately compromising operations? I think someone has been doing it for 20 years. Operation Sandstorm. 2 operations in Syria between 2011 and 2013. 1 in Iraq in 2016. Mitchell's operation yesterday. 5 incidents over 20 years where intelligence failed in exactly the same way, leading American forces into prepared ambushes. 5 incidents that you know about. Exactly, and you survived 3 of them. Operation Sandstorm, Syria in 2013. And yesterday. Elena's mind was racing. The Syria operation, 2013. That was me. Guardian Overwatch supporting a SEAL reconnaissance element. Intelligence indicated clear operating environment. You identified a prepared ambush position engaged from long range, prevented American casualties. The official report said you got lucky, but it wasn't luck, was it? It was pattern recognition. I saw the same terrain setup, the same positioning, the same indicators as Sandstorm. And yesterday, same pattern again. Professional positioning, coordinated fire plans, knowledge of American movement. Someone knew Mitchell's team was coming. Morse closed the laptop. Elena, you're not being investigated because Foster thinks you have PTSD. You're being investigated because someone wants to discredit you before you realize you're the only person who's survived multiple attempts to kill American Special Operations Forces through intelligence compromise. Elena felt the world shift underneath her. You're saying someone has been feeding bad intelligence for 20 years, and every time their ambush fails, I'm the reason why. You're the pattern. 3 operations where intelligence failed ambushes were prepared and you prevented catastrophic American casualties. Someone wants you gone before you connect the dots. Foster. Foster's a useful idiot. He genuinely believes he's protecting intelligence integrity. But someone above him is feeding the investigation. Someone who wants you declared mentally unfit so your combat assessments can be dismissed as PTSD-driven paranoia. Elena stood and walked to the window, looking out over the base. If you're right, then there's a mole somewhere in the intelligence community who's been operating for 2 decades. Someone with access to operational planning, someone who can feed information to hostile forces, someone powerful enough to protect themselves by discrediting anyone who gets close. That's exactly what I'm saying. And you want me to help you find them. I want you to stay alive long enough for me to find them. Because right now you're the biggest threat to someone who's very good at staying hidden. They failed to kill you in Sandstorm. They failed again in Syria. They failed yesterday. And now, you're starting to ask questions. That makes you extremely dangerous to someone who's invested 20 years in staying invisible. Elena turned back to face Morse. What do you need from me? Complete operational debriefs on Sandstorm and Syria 2013. Every detail you remember. Terrain enemy tactics, how you identified the ambush setup. Then I need you to review intelligence assessments from 4 other operations where American forces took unexpected casualties. I want to know if you see the same patterns. And Foster's investigation. Foster's investigation continues. Let him build his case. Let whoever's protecting the mole think their plan is working. Meanwhile, you and I are going to find out who's been killing Americans for 20 years and why you keep preventing it. Elena nodded slowly. When do we start? Now. I've got secure workspace set up 2 floors down. No windows, no monitors, nothing that could compromise operational security. You're going to spend the next 72 hours living in classified documents and your own memories. Can you handle that? Can you handle what happens when we find out who's responsible? Morse's smile was cold. Elena, I've been hunting this mole for 5 years. I've lost 2 assets and 3 career intelligence officers trying to prove someone was compromising operations. You're the first person who survived enough ambushes to recognize the pattern. So yes, I can handle what happens next. The question is whether you can handle being the target while we work." Elena thought about Mitchell's team, about Webb's leg, about 4 American warriors who came home alive because she'd been paranoid and experienced enough to recognize a threat that intelligence missed. "I've been a target before. I'm still here. Let's find this bastard." "Good. Because whoever they are, they already know you survived yesterday. And they know you're talking to me. Which means they're going to try to discredit you, isolate you, or eliminate you before we can expose them. Let them try." Morse gathered files and laptops with efficient movements. "One more thing. Mitchell's being recalled to Virginia tomorrow for debriefing. His testimony is critical. If he confirms your assessment, it makes the case for compromise stronger, but it also puts him in danger. Someone might try to ensure his testimony doesn't support your version of events." "You think they'd harm Mitchell?" "I think they've killed Americans before to protect their operation. One more body won't matter to them." Elena felt anger burn through her exhaustion. "Then we need to warn him." "We can't. Not without revealing that we're investigating. If the mole knows we're active, they'll go to ground and we'll never find them. Mitchell has to walk into that debriefing room tomorrow with no idea he's being targeted. And you have to let him go knowing he might not come back." Elena closed her eyes briefly, thinking about the young commander who'd stood in her quarters an hour ago, pledging to tell the truth, regardless of career consequences. That's asking a lot. "I know, but it's necessary. We protect the investigation or we lose everything, including any chance of stopping this mole before they kill more Americans." Elena opened her eyes. "Then Mitchell better be as tough as I think he is. Because if something happens to him because I didn't warn him, I'm going to find this mole myself and skip the investigation part." "Deal. Now, let's get to work. We've got 20 years of deaths to review and about 48 hours before someone realizes you're not being successfully discredited and tries a more permanent solution." They walked together toward the secure workspace, Elena's mind already reviewing patterns and memories from operations that had seemed random at the time, but now formed a constellation of deliberate death. Somewhere, someone had been killing Americans for 2 decades. Someone with power access and the ruthlessness to sacrifice warriors for whatever cause they served. And Elena Vasquez, 55 years old, with aching knees and 2 decades of scars, was about to become their worst nightmare. Because she'd survived their ambushes 3 times. She recognized their patterns. And she was very, very good at hunting people who thought they were untouchable. The hunt had begun. The secure workspace was smaller than Elena expected, barely large enough for 2 desks, 4 monitors, and the weight of 20 years of classified deaths. Morse locked the door behind them and activated a white noise generator that made Elena's ears itch. "No one hears what we discuss in this room," Morse said, dropping thick folders onto the desk. "No recording devices, no networked computers. Everything stays analog until we're ready to move." Elena picked up the first folder. Operation Sandstorm. Her own blood was probably still on some of those pages, metaphorically speaking. She opened it and started reading. 3 pages in her hands started shaking. "What is it?" Morse asked. "The intelligence assessment. I never saw this version. The one we received in-country was different. Simplified. Key details about enemy strength and positioning were omitted. Someone sanitized it before it reached your team. Someone wanted us blind." Elena's voice was tight. "We went in thinking we'd face maybe 6 Taliban fighters. The actual assessment shows 15 to 20 with crew-served weapons. They knew. Someone knew exactly how many we'd face and stripped that information before it reached us." Morse pulled up a document on her monitor. "Syria 2013. Same pattern. Full intelligence assessment shows significant enemy presence with professional military training. The assessment delivered to the SEAL team you were protecting showed minimal militia presence with small arms only." Elena stood and walked to Morse's monitor, reading over her shoulder. The pattern was undeniable. Someone had systematically stripped critical threat data from intelligence before it reached operational commanders. "How is this possible?" Elena asked. Intelligence assessments go through multiple review layers. Someone would notice information being removed, unless the person doing it has authority to make final edits before operational dissemination. Morse pulled up an organizational chart. There are exactly 7 people in the intelligence community with that level of access across multiple theaters of operation. All of them are senior officials with decades of experience and top-level security clearances. 7 suspects. 7 people who could be responsible for killing Americans for 20 years. And every single one of them is powerful enough to destroy both our careers if we're wrong. Elena studied the names on the chart. 5 men, 2 women. Ages ranging from 52 to 68. Combined service of over 200 years. If the mole was among them, they'd spent decades building trust and credibility. We need to narrow this down before Mitchell's debriefing tomorrow, Elena said. If someone tries to influence his testimony or worse, we need to know who to watch. Agreed. Let's start with access patterns. Morse began pulling up more files. Operation Sandstorm, June 2005. Who had final sign-off on your intelligence assessment? Elena scanned the document authorization page. Deputy Director Carlson, NSA. Syria, 2013. Same signature, Carlson again. Morse went still. That's interesting. Carlson retired in 2018. Died of a heart attack 6 months later. If he was the mole, the compromises should have stopped. But Mitchell's operation was yesterday. So either Carlson wasn't the mole or there's more than one. Morse's voice was grim. A network, not an individual. Someone trained by Carlson who took over after his death. Elena felt the case expanding in her mind, becoming more complex and dangerous. If it's a network, they've been operating for over 20 years with multiple people in positions of authority. That level of infiltration means they've got protection at the highest levels, which means we can't trust anyone outside this room. Not even your own agency. Especially not my own agency. DIA provides intelligence support to Special Operations Forces. If someone inside DIA is part of this network, they'd know exactly which operations to compromise for maximum impact. Morse pulled up another file. Iraq, 2016. Army Special Forces team ambushed during a raid. 3 dead, 5 wounded. Final intelligence approval signed by, let me guess, someone who worked under Carlson. Assistant Director Victoria Hammond. She was Carlson's deputy for 8 years before taking over his position after retirement. Elena moved back to her own desk and started cross-referencing files. Show me the other operations, the ones where Americans died and I wasn't there to prevent it. Morse pulled up 4 more folders. Elena read through each one methodically, looking for patterns in the intelligence failures, the terrain, the enemy tactics. 30 minutes later, she had her answer. They're all the same, Elena said quietly. Every single one follows an identical template. Professional ambush positions on high ground. Coordinated fire from multiple positions. American forces led into terrain that offers minimal cover. Intelligence assessments that underestimate enemy strength and capability by at least 50%. Someone has a playbook. Someone has been running the same operation for 20 years with minor variations, and they're good enough that each failure looks like bad luck or fog of war rather than deliberate compromise. Morse leaned back in her chair, exhaustion evident in her face. Elena, do you understand what we're talking about here? If this is a network that's been operating since at least 2005, they've had 20 years to establish protocols, recruit assets, and eliminate threats. They've survived multiple administrations, countless security reviews, and at least 3 major reorganizations of the intelligence community. Whatever we're up against, it's sophisticated, patient, and absolutely ruthless. Then we need to be more ruthless. We need to be smart. One wrong move and we're both dead or discredited. Probably both. Elena's phone buzzed. She checked it and felt her blood run cold. What? Morse demanded. Text from an unknown number. Stop asking questions or Commander Mitchell doesn't make it to Virginia. Morse was on her feet instantly. Show me. Elena held up the phone. The message had already disappeared, wiped remotely. They're watching us, Morse said. They know we're investigating. They know we're together, and they're threatening Mitchell to back us off. Elena was already moving toward the door. We need to get Mitchell off this base now. If they're willing to threaten openly, they're ready to act. Wait. Morse grabbed Elena's arm. Think about this. If we pull Mitchell out, we confirm we're investigating and we lose any chance of catching them off guard. But if we leave him exposed, they might make a move and reveal themselves. Elena stared at her. You want to use Mitchell as bait. I want to catch a mole who's been killing Americans for 20 years. Sometimes that requires difficult choices. Mitchell is a 32-year-old commander with his whole career ahead of him. He saved his team under fire. He's preparing to give honest testimony that could end his career. And you want to hang him out as bait. I want to stop whoever's been killing Americans before they kill more Americans. Mitchell is one man. This mole has already killed at least 15 operators over 2 decades. How many more die if we don't stop them now? Elena felt rage and frustration war inside her. Morse wasn't wrong about the math, but math didn't account for the fact that Mitchell had stood in Elena's quarters 2 hours ago, promising to tell the truth regardless of consequences. There has to be another way. There isn't. Not if we want to catch them. They made a mistake by threatening Mitchell openly. That means they're worried. Worried enough to act rashly. If we can control the circumstances of Mitchell's transport to Virginia, we can set a trap. And if the trap fails, then we lose Mitchell and probably our own lives. But at least we tried. Elena walked back to the desk and sat down hard. You're asking me to risk a man's life to catch a suspect we can't even identify yet. I'm asking you to make the same calculation you've made in 47 combat operations. Risk versus reward. Mission priorities. Acceptable losses. I've never found losses acceptable. No, but you've recognized when they were necessary. Operation Sandstorm, you provided covering fire that allowed 9 people to escape while 4 died. You made the call that saving 9 was worth the cost of 4. This is the same calculation at a different scale. Elena closed her eyes, seeing Webb bleeding in that valley, seeing Mitchell's face when he realized Elena had been right about the ambush, seeing 20 years of dead Americans whose names she'd never know. If we do this, we do it my way, Elena said finally. I control Mitchell's security during transport. I select the route, the team, the protocols. And if anything goes wrong, I'm the one in position to respond. You're 55 years old with documented injuries. You can't provide close protection for a moving vehicle operation. Watch me. Morse studied her for a long moment. You really care about that kid, don't you? You met him yesterday and you're ready to risk everything to protect him. He risked his career to defend me when it would have been easier to throw me under the bus. That earns loyalty. And more than that, he represents what this is supposed to be about. Good officers leading good teams trying to do dangerous work without getting killed by their own intelligence apparatus. If we lose people like Mitchell because we're too cowardly to protect them properly, then we've already lost the war. All right, your way. But Elena, if this goes sideways, neither of us survives the fallout. Career reputation, possibly freedom. We'll be painted as paranoid operators who manufactured a conspiracy theory and got a SEAL commander killed in the process. Then we better not let it go sideways. They spent the next 3 hours planning the operation with the kind of detail that would have made a special operations team proud. Mitchell's flight to Virginia was scheduled for 0600. Standard protocol called for a base security escort to the airfield, then commercial transport to Virginia with minimal security. Elena threw out the entire plan and built a new one. Mitchell rides in an armored vehicle with me as driver, she explained, marking routes on a map. Morse, you arrange 2 decoy vehicles using the standard protocol. Let them follow the expected route at the expected time. Mitchell and I leave 30 minutes earlier using a secondary route that requires pre-positioning access authorization. If the mole is monitoring Mitchell's transport, and they certainly are, the decoy will draw their attention while you slip out the back door, Morse said. Good. But you'll need backup. If they realize you've switched routes, they'll adjust. Then we need someone we can trust absolutely. Someone with zero connection to intelligence command structures. Someone who has as much reason to hate whoever's been killing Americans as we do. Morse thought for a moment. Torres and Costa, Mitchell's team. They're still on base receiving medical monitoring for Costa's shrapnel wounds. They've got no reason to be involved in intelligence operations, which means no one would suspect them of being part of your security element. Can we trust them? They watched you save their team yesterday. I think we can trust them with this. Elena nodded. Contact them quietly. Tell them Elena needs their help with an unofficial security matter. Don't mention Mitchell. Don't mention the mole. Just ask if they're willing. And if they refuse, they won't. Morse made the call using a secure line, spoke for 3 minutes, then hung up. They'll be here in 20 minutes. Torres said, and I quote, Elena wants help, we provide help. What's the mission? See trust. 20 minutes later, Chief Ryan Torres and Petty Officer James Costa arrived at the secure workspace. Both men looked confused about being summoned to a classified facility in the middle of the night, but their confusion evaporated when they saw Elena. Ma'am, Torres said, what's going on? Elena laid it out clearly and quickly. Someone had compromised Mitchell's operation. Someone had been compromising operations for 20 years, getting Americans killed. Someone was now threatening Mitchell before his debriefing in Virginia. She needed security for an unauthorized transport operation that would either expose the mole or get everyone involved killed. When she finished, both SEALs were silent for a moment. Then Costa spoke. Ma'am, with respect, that's the craziest thing I've heard in 6 years as a SEAL. Which means it's probably true, because nothing normal makes sense anymore. Are you saying you'll help? I'm saying you saved our lives yesterday. Commander Mitchell is our team leader. If someone's trying to hurt him, they're going to have to go through us. When do we move? 05:30. Mitchell doesn't know about any of this. As far as he's concerned, he's getting picked up for his flight at 0600. We intercept him at 05:30 and bring him in on the actual plan. Torres frowned. Why not brief him now? Because if something goes wrong and Mitchell is captured or killed, I want him to honestly say he had no idea we were investigating a mole. That's his best protection if this becomes a political nightmare. Plausible deniability. Smart. Torres checked his watch. That gives us 4 hours to prep. What do you need? Elena outlined the plan. Armored vehicle pre-positioned at a secondary motor pool. Weapons check and ammunition load. Alternative route to the airfield that avoided standard checkpoints. Communications protocol that bypassed base systems. Emergency extraction plan if the operation was compromised. By 0300, everything was ready. Elena tried to sleep for 90 minutes, but her mind wouldn't stop running scenarios. How would the mole try to hit Mitchell ambush on the road? Insider attack using compromised base personnel. Something more subtle, like sabotaging the vehicle. Every possibility led to violence. Every scenario ended with bodies. At 0500, Elena gave up on sleep and started her equipment check. Body armor, weapons, ammunition, medical supplies, communications gear, everything she'd need if this turned into a firefight. Morse appeared at 0515, looking as exhausted as Elena felt. Second thoughts? Elena asked. Constant thoughts. Second, third, fourth. But we're committed now. Morse handed Elena a phone. Secure device. Encrypted. Only you, me, and Torres have the frequency. If something happens, I'll coordinate response from TOC. And if something happens to you, then you're on your own, and you better be as good as your reputation suggests. Elena pocketed the phone. Let's go get Mitchell. They moved through the pre-dawn darkness toward Mitchell's quarters. Torres and Costa flanked them, weapons concealed but ready. The base was quiet at this hour, most personnel still sleeping before reveille. Elena knocked on Mitchell's door at exactly 0530. Mitchell opened it wearing PT gear, clearly preparing for his day. His expression shifted from confusion to alarm when he saw 4 armed people standing in his doorway. What's wrong? He asked immediately. Get dressed. Full uniform. We're leaving now. Elena's voice left no room for argument. My flight isn't until... Your flight is canceled. Someone wants you dead before you reach Virginia. We're getting you there alive using a different route. You've got 2 minutes. To his credit, Mitchell didn't waste time arguing. He grabbed his gear and was dressed in 90 seconds. What's happening? I'll brief you in the vehicle. Right now we move. They crossed the base using routes that avoided security cameras and standard patrol paths. The armored SUV was waiting where Elena had positioned it, fueled and ready. She took the driver's seat. Mitchell rode shotgun. Torres and Costa took the rear seats with weapons ready. As Elena started the engine, Mitchell finally spoke. "Elena, talk to me. Who wants me dead?" "Someone in the intelligence community who's been compromising special operations for 20 years. Someone who knew we were investigating. Someone who threatened you to get us to back off." Mitchell absorbed that. The ambush yesterday wasn't random. Nothing about yesterday was random. Your operation was deliberately compromised. Intelligence was stripped before it reached you. The ambush was prepared and waiting. I was positioned there because someone suspected compromise and wanted insurance. Jesus. And now they're trying to kill me before I can testify. Before you can confirm that intelligence was deliberately wrong, your testimony proves compromise. Without it, they can paint the ambush as bad luck and me as paranoid. With it, someone has to answer for systematic intelligence failure. Elena drove through the secondary gate using credentials Morse had provided. The guard checked their authorization and waved them through without question. So far, the plan was working. "Where are we going?" Mitchell asked. "Alternative route to the airfield. Should take 45 minutes instead of 20, but avoids standard checkpoints where someone could intercept us." "And then what?" "Then you get on a plane to Virginia, give your testimony honestly, and help us identify whoever's been killing Americans for 2 decades. Mitchell was quiet for a moment. "You know, there's a simpler explanation than a vast conspiracy, right? Maybe the ambush was just bad intelligence. Maybe I made a mistake trusting the assessment. Maybe you're seeing patterns that don't exist." Elena glanced at him. "You really believe that?" "No, but I had to say it. Had to hear how it sounds when someone tries to explain away what we both know is true. They're going to say exactly that in Virginia. Suggest you're paranoid, suggest I'm covering my mistakes, suggest the whole thing is coincidence. Are you prepared for that? I'm prepared to tell the truth. Whatever happens after that is out of my control." They drove in silence for several minutes, following a route that took them through industrial areas on the edge of the base. Dawn was beginning to break, pale light filtering through gray clouds. Torres spoke from the back seat. "Vehicle behind us, black sedan, maintaining consistent distance for the past 3 minutes." Elena checked the mirror. Sure enough, headlights pacing them exactly. "Could be coincidence. This is a public road." At 0540 on a Tuesday morning, not likely. Elena accelerated slightly. The sedan matched her speed. She slowed. The sedan slowed. "We're being followed," Mitchell said. "Torres, Costa, weapons ready." Mitchell, call Morse and tell her we have a tail. Use the secure phone in the center console. Mitchell grabbed the phone and made the call. Elena heard him explain the situation in clipped military terminology while she calculated options. The airfield was 20 minutes ahead. But 20 minutes was a long time to be followed by someone who might be preparing an attack. "Morse says abort the route and take alternative 3, Mitchell reported. "She'll have air security meet us at extraction point Beta." "Copy that." Elena took the next turn sharply, heading toward a secondary route that would add 15 minutes but offered better defensive terrain if things went bad. The sedan followed. "They're not even being subtle anymore," Costa said. "They want us to know we're being tracked." "Or they want us to panic and make mistakes," Elena replied. "Everyone stay calm. We've got 20 miles of rural road ahead before we reach the extraction point. If they're going to hit us, it'll be in that zone where response time is slowest. So we're driving into an ambush. We're driving through potential ambush terrain while prepared for contact. There's a difference." Mitchell checked his weapon. "You do this kind of thing often in your contractor work." "Not as much as you'd think. Mostly I sit in observation positions and provide long-range support. The running gunfights are usually extra." "Usually. This week has been unusual." The sedan dropped back as they entered the rural stretch, maintaining distance but staying visible. Elena didn't like it. If they wanted to attack, why not close distance? If they wanted to intimidate, why not pull alongside? Unless they were hurting. "Torres, check for additional vehicles ahead of us. Use your phone, pull up traffic apps, anything that shows vehicle locations." Torres worked his phone. "Nothing on standard traffic monitors." Wait, Morse sent a message. Says satellite shows 2 vehicles positioned on the road ahead, stationary, approximately 8 miles from our current location. That's our ambush point. Elena's mind raced through options. They could turn around, but the sedan behind would engage. They could proceed and drive into the ambush ahead. Or they could abandon the vehicle and go cross-country, but that left them vulnerable and slow. Mitchell asked Morse how fast she can get air support to our location. Mitchell made the call. She says 12 minutes minimum. QRF birds are spinning up now, but they need authorization to launch. 12 minutes was an eternity in combat. Elena checked the map display. There was a side road coming up, barely more than a dirt track that wound through forested terrain toward the airfield. Not designed for vehicle traffic, but possible. Everyone hold on, we're going off-road. She yanked the wheel hard, sending the SUV onto the dirt track at 40 miles per hour. The vehicle bounced violently over ruts and rocks. Behind them, the sedan tried to follow, but wasn't equipped for the terrain. It bottomed out hard and stopped. One down, Torres reported. But the vehicles ahead will adjust. They know we took the side road. Elena pushed the SUV harder, threading through trees that scraped both sides of the vehicle. The track was barely wide enough, designed for forestry access rather than tactical movement. How far to the airfield on this route? Mitchell asked, gripping the oh shit handle as they bounced through a particularly rough section. 5 miles, maybe 6, maybe. Should take us 15 minutes if the track stays passable. And if it doesn't, then we walk the rest of the way and hope QRF gets here before whoever's hunting us. Costa was watching behind them through the rear window. Clear so far, no pursuit visible. That worried Elena more than active pursuit. If the ambush team wasn't following, they were repositioning to intercept at a better location. Torres, tell Morse we need satellite feed on this area. I want to know where those 2 vehicles are moving. Torres relayed the request, then listened to the response. His expression changed. Morse says the 2 vehicles that were positioned ahead of us aren't moving. They're maintaining position on the main road. Then who's... The rocket-propelled grenade hit the ground 15 meters in front of the SUV, detonating in a shower of dirt and fire. Elena slammed the brakes and threw the vehicle into reverse, but a second explosion behind them cut off that escape route. They were bracketed, pinned. Contact front, Costa shouted. Gunfire erupted from the tree line ahead, rounds sparking off the armored vehicle. Elena cut the wheel hard, putting the SUV's engine block between them and the shooters. Everyone out. Cover behind the vehicle. They bailed out in practiced movements using the SUV as cover while incoming fire intensified. Elena counted at least 6 shooters in the trees, coordinated fire suggesting professional training. This wasn't base security. This wasn't local law enforcement. This was a professional hit team. Torres, how long on QRF? Elena shouted over the gunfire. 8 minutes. 8 minutes to survive against a prepared team with crew-served weapons on terrain they'd clearly pre-selected. Elena assessed their position with the kind of cold calculation that 28 years of combat had ingrained. They had cover, but no concealment, limited ammunition, no support, and an enemy force that outnumbered them at least 2 to 1. But Elena had survived worse odds, and she had 3 Navy SEALs who'd survived worse odds too. Mitchell, she shouted, you remember what I did in that valley yesterday? You mean when you charged into an ambush position and killed 12 people? Yeah, feel like returning the favor. Mitchell looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Then slowly he smiled. You're going to flank them while we suppress. Torres, Costa, can you put enough fire on those positions to keep their heads down for 60 seconds? For you, we'll do 90, Torres replied. Mitchell, you're with me. We're going left through those trees. When we get behind them, we hit hard and fast. Confusion and violence of action. Make them think they're facing a larger force. That's insane. That's why it'll work. On my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. Torres and Costa opened up with sustained fire, hammering the enemy positions. Elena and Mitchell sprinted left into the trees, using terrain and vegetation to mask their movement. Her knees screamed. Her back hurt. She was 55 years old, running through a forest under fire with a rifle in her hands and death behind every tree. She'd never felt more alive. Elena moved through the forest with Mitchell close behind their boots, hitting soft earth in rhythm, while gunfire cracked through the trees behind them. Her lungs burned, and her knees protested every step, but muscle memory from 1,000 training runs drove her forward. They covered 100 meters in 45 seconds. Then Elena raised her fist, and Mitchell dropped into a crouch beside her. 6 hostiles that I counted, Elena whispered. Professional spacing coordinated fire discipline. They're not militia. Military contractors. Or intelligence assets. Someone with deep pockets hired professionals to kill you before Virginia. Mitchell's jaw tightened. Then let's make sure they regret taking the contract. They moved forward another 30 meters, circling wide to get behind the enemy position. Elena could hear Torres and Costa maintaining suppressive fire-controlled bursts designed to keep heads down without wasting ammunition. Good discipline. They'd buy the time Elena needed. She caught movement ahead, a shooter repositioning to get a better angle on the SUV. Elena brought her rifle up smoothly, acquired center mass, and fired twice. The man dropped without making a sound. Mitchell was already tracking to the second target, a shooter 10 meters away who was focused entirely on the vehicle. 2 shots. Clean kill. The enemy force suddenly realized they were taking fire from behind. Voices shouted commands in a language Elena didn't recognize. The team started to pivot, trying to address the new threat while maintaining fire on Torres and Costa. Elena keyed her radio. Torres, we're behind them. Push forward on my mark and we'll catch them in crossfire. Copy. Ready when you are. 3, 2, 1 mark. Elena and Mitchell opened up with rapid fire while Torres and Costa charged forward from their position. The enemy team found themselves caught between 2 aggressive elements with nowhere to go. Professional or not, no one survives a properly executed ambush when they're the ones being ambushed. The fight was over in 20 seconds. 6 enemy fighters down, no American casualties. Elena moved through the positions, quickly checking bodies for identification. Nothing. No wallets, no ID cards, no unit patches. Just professional kit and weapons that could have been purchased anywhere. Whoever hired them scrubbed their identities, Elena said. We won't get names from bodies. Mitchell was checking one of the fallen men's phones. Encrypted, military-grade security. This wasn't some hired thug operation. The sound of helicopters approached rapidly. Elena looked up to see 2 Blackhawks coming in fast and low. QRF had arrived. That was some of the most aggressive tactical movement I've seen outside of SEAL training, Mitchell said, looking at Elena with new respect. Where'd you learn to fight like that? Places that officially don't exist, doing things that officially never happened. You picked it up pretty well yourself for someone who thought I was obsolete yesterday. I'm never questioning your combat assessment again. The helicopters landed and a dozen heavily armed operators poured out, securing the area with practiced efficiency. The team leader, a hard-faced Lieutenant Colonel Elena didn't recognize, approached with his weapons still at the ready. Who's in command here? He demanded. That would be me, Elena said. Elena Vasquez. I'm the contractor who... I know who you are. Deputy Director Morse briefed me personally. She said you were transporting Commander Mitchell to the airfield when you were ambushed by unknown hostiles. Unknown but well-equipped and well-trained. 6 professionals with military-grade weapons and communications. Someone paid a lot of money to make sure Mitchell never made it to Virginia. The lieutenant colonel studied the bodies, his expression darkening. This happened on American soil, on a road leading from a military base. Someone had detailed intelligence about Mitchell's movement and positioned a kill team accordingly. That's why we need to get Mitchell to Virginia immediately. His testimony is critical. Understood. My orders are to secure this area and extract all personnel to the airfield. Commander Mitchell, you're with me. Ms. Vasquez, Deputy Director Morse requests you return to base for immediate debriefing. Something in his tone made Elena's instincts scream warning. She glanced at Mitchell, then at Torres and Costa. All 3 SEALs had the same expression. Something wasn't right. Lieutenant Colonel, I'd prefer to accompany Commander Mitchell to the airfield, Elena said carefully. That's not your call. Morse was explicit. Mitchell goes to Virginia. You return to base. Non-negotiable. Elena's hand drifted closer to her sidearm. Then I'd like to confirm those orders directly with Deputy Director Morse. She's in a classified briefing. Unavailable for communication. Now, Ms. Vasquez, you've done your job. Let us do ours. Mitchell stepped forward. Sir, with respect, Elena stays with me until I'm on that plane. She saved my life twice in the past 24 hours. I trust her judgment. The lieutenant colonel's expression hardened. Commander, you don't have authority to countermand orders from DIA command. Now get in the helicopter, or I'll have my men escort you. Torres and Costa moved subtly, positioning themselves between the QRF operators and Elena. The tension ratcheted up instantly. A dozen weapons not quite pointed, but definitely ready. Elena made a decision. Mitchell, get in the helicopter. Elena, I'm not leaving you. That's an order, Commander. You need to get to Virginia. Your testimony matters more than my concerns about who gave what orders. She looked directly into his eyes, hoping he'd read the message underneath her words. Trust me, I can handle myself. Mitchell hesitated, clearly torn. Then he nodded slowly. All right, but Torres Costa, you stay with Elena. That's not negotiable. The lieutenant colonel looked like he wanted to argue, but technically Mitchell had authority over his own team members. Fine. The SEALs can escort Ms. Vasquez back to base. Commander, let's move. Mitchell climbed into the helicopter, giving Elena one last look that said he understood something was wrong, but didn't know what. The Black Hawk lifted off, banking hard toward the airfield. As soon as it disappeared from sight, the lieutenant colonel's entire demeanor changed. His weapon came up, pointed directly at Elena's chest. On your knees, all three of you, now. Torres and Costa reacted instantly, weapons coming up to create a standoff. Elena raised her hand, stopping them. Easy, let's talk about this. She kept her voice calm, controlled. Lieutenant Colonel, who gave you your orders? Deputy Director Victoria Hammond. She said you'd become compromised. Said you were fabricating evidence of intelligence failures to cover your own mistakes. Said you'd become a threat to national security and needed to be contained. Elena felt pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. Victoria Hammond, Carlson's deputy, the woman who'd taken over his position after his retirement, the woman whose signature had appeared on multiple failed intelligence assessments. Hammond is the mole, Elena said quietly. She's the one who's been compromising operations for 20 years, and she just sent you to kill me before I could expose her. The lieutenant colonel's weapon didn't waver, but uncertainty flickered across his face. That's exactly what she said you'd claim. That you'd try to deflect by accusing senior officials of treason. Then ask yourself why she ordered you to kill me instead of arresting me. If I'm truly compromised, why not bring me in for proper investigation? Why send a kill team to murder me in the woods where there are no witnesses? There are witnesses. My entire team. Your team that Hammond personally selected. Your team that follows her orders without question. You think she chose you randomly? The lieutenant colonel's eyes narrowed, but Elena saw doubt growing. She pressed harder. How long have you served under Hammond? 8 years. And in those 8 years, how many classified operations has she assigned you? How many times has she sent you to handle situations that required absolute loyalty and discretion? He didn't answer, but his silence was answer enough. You're her cleaner, Elena continued. She uses you when operations go wrong and someone needs to disappear quietly. How many people have you killed on her orders, Lieutenant Colonel? How many deaths that were justified as national security, but were actually covering up her intelligence compromises? Shut up. Torres Costa, you heard the ambush team earlier. What language were they speaking? Russian. Torres answered immediately. Or maybe Ukrainian, definitely Eastern European. Elena looked back at the lieutenant colonel. 6 Russian-speaking contractors with military-grade equipment ambushed us on American soil. Someone with access to classified movement plans hired them. Someone who knew exactly where we'd be and when we'd be there. Someone who wanted Commander Mitchell dead before he could testify about intelligence failures. You're reaching. Check your orders again. Read exactly what Hammond told you to do with me. The lieutenant colonel pulled out his phone with his free hand, keeping his weapon trained on Elena. He read silently, and Elena watched his expression change as he processed what he was seeing. She told you to neutralize me, didn't she? Elena said. Not arrest, not detain, neutralize. That's assassination terminology. She said you were an immediate threat. To her, not to national security. To her personally, because I've connected the pattern of intelligence failures that she's been orchestrating for 2 decades. One of the QRF operators spoke up. Sir, this doesn't feel right. If she's really compromised, why not bring her in properly? The lieutenant colonel's weapon lowered slightly. Because Hammond said there wasn't time. Said Vasquez was preparing to flee the country with classified information. Do I look like I'm fleeing? I just fought off 6 contractors to protect Commander Mitchell. If I was compromised, wouldn't I have let them kill him? The logic was undeniable. The lieutenant colonel lowered his weapon completely. What the hell is going on here? What's going on is that Deputy Director Victoria Hammond has been feeding bad intelligence to Special Operations Forces for 20 years, getting Americans killed to benefit whoever she's actually working for. And when I started figuring out the pattern, she decided I was too dangerous to let live. If that's true, it is true. And Mitchell is walking into a trap in Virginia. Hammond sent him to Virginia with her personally selected QRF team. What do you think happens when he arrives? The lieutenant colonel's face went pale. They'll kill him, make it look like an accident or enemy action. Exactly. We need to recall that helicopter right now. He was already on his radio. Black Hawk 1-7, this is Overlord. Abort your flight to the airfield. Return to my position immediately. I say again, abort and return. Static. No response. Black Hawk 1-7, respond. More static. Then a voice Elena didn't recognize. Overlord Black Hawk 1-7. We're experiencing communications difficulties. Continuing to destination as ordered. Negative. You are ordered to return immediately. Sorry, Overlord. Breaking up. Unable to. Static. Unable to comply. The transmission cut off completely. Elena was already moving toward the lieutenant colonel's helicopter. We need to intercept them before they reach the airfield. If Hammond's people are on that bird with Mitchell, they'll kill him the moment they're out of sight. My bird can't catch them. They've got a 5-minute head start and they're flying at maximum speed. Torres spoke up. Then we need to warn Mitchell. Does he have a phone? Base issue. Probably monitored by Hammond's people. Elena pulled out the secure phone Morse had given her. But I've got an encrypted line that Hammond doesn't know about. If I can reach Morse, she can warn Mitchell. She dialed. The phone rang 4 times before Morse answered, her voice tight with stress. Elena, where are you? Hammond is claiming you went rogue and attacked a QRF team. Morse listened carefully. Hammond is the mole. She sent a kill team after Mitchell and me. The team is dead, but Mitchell is on a helicopter with Hammond's people heading to the airfield. They're going to kill him. We need to intercept now. Silence on the line for 3 seconds that felt like hours. Are you certain? Morse finally asked. I just survived a professional hit squad and barely stopped Hammond's cleaner from executing me on her orders. Yes, I'm certain. Jesus, if Hammond is the mole and she's got Mitchell. Morse's voice trailed off, then came back harder. I can divert air traffic control. Force the helicopter to land at a secure location where we control the security. But Elena, this is it. If we move against Hammond and we're wrong, our careers are over. And if we don't move and Mitchell dies, we've failed the one person who was brave enough to tell the truth about what happened. Make the call, Morse. Done. I'm grounding that helicopter, but Hammond will know we're on to her the moment I divert the flight. She'll activate whatever contingency plans she has. This is about to get very ugly very fast. It's already ugly. We're just making it visible. Elena hung up and looked at the lieutenant colonel. What's your name? Sanderson. Lieutenant Colonel Mike Sanderson. Sanderson, in about 3 minutes, Deputy Director Victoria Hammond is going to realize her operation is blown. She's going to start making calls, pulling strings, activating assets. Some of those assets are probably on this base. We need to get to Mitchell before Hammond's people do. Sanderson looked at his team. Anyone not comfortable with what we're about to do, speak now. Because we're potentially moving against a senior intelligence official based on the word of a contractor who was scheduled for termination 30 minutes ago. No one moved. No one spoke. The QRF operators stood ready, waiting for orders. Sanderson nodded. Then we're all in. Let's go save a SEAL commander from his own intelligence apparatus. They loaded into the remaining helicopter. As they lifted off, Elena could see the other Black Hawk in the distance, circling as air traffic control forced it to abort its landing. Mitchell was alive for now. But how long that would last depended on how fast they could reach him. Torres leaned close to Elena. "Ma'am, I've got a question. If Hammond is the mole and she's been operating for 20 years, why hasn't anyone caught her before now?" "Because she's smart, patient. She only compromises operations occasionally enough that each failure looks like normal friction of war. And she's built a network of people like Sanderson here, loyal operators who follow orders without questioning because they trust her authority. But Sanderson turned on her. Because I gave him a reason to question his orders. Most people never get that reason. They just follow commands from someone they believe is protecting national security, never realizing they're actually enabling treason." Costa spoke up from across the cabin. "So, how many others are out there? How many operators following Hammond's orders right now thinking they're doing the right thing?" "That's the question that terrifies me, because Hammond didn't build this network alone. She learned from Carlson, who'd been doing it for years before her. This isn't one traitor, this is a system. A culture of corruption that's infected our intelligence apparatus so deeply that we can't trust anyone who's been in the system longer than a decade." The helicopter banked hard, heading toward the coordinates where Mitchell's bird had been forced to land. Elena checked her weapons, ensuring everything was ready. Whatever happened next, it was going to be violent. Morse's voice crackled through the radio. "Elena, Mitchell's helicopter just landed at Auxiliary Field 7. That's an old training facility, minimal security, isolated. Hammond chose that location for a reason. Because it's perfect for an execution. No witnesses, easy body disposal. They land, kill Mitchell, claim he was shot during the ambush earlier and died of his wounds en route. QRF is mobilizing, but they're 20 minutes out. You're the closest asset. We're 5 minutes away. Tell the QRF to come in loud. I want Hammond's people to know they're about to be surrounded. Maybe that'll make them hesitate long enough for us to extract Mitchell alive." "Copy that. And Elena, Hammond knows we're coming. She just tried to access my secure communications. I've locked her out, but she's aware the operation is compromised. She's going to activate every asset she has. Then we move faster than our assets can respond. Elena out." The helicopter descended rapidly toward Auxiliary Field 7. Elena could see Mitchell's Black Hawk sitting on the tarmac, rotors still spinning. No movement visible around the aircraft. That was wrong. They should have been offloading by now. "Sanderson, something's not right. Why is everyone still inside? Maybe they're waiting for orders. Or they're waiting for us to land so they can take us all out at once." Elena keyed the radio. "Pilot, do not land. Hold at 300 feet and circle the aircraft. Give us a visual." The helicopter circled and Elena scanned the Black Hawk below through the cabin door. Their movement inside. Someone was struggling. "They're fighting in there. Mitchell's engaging Hammond's people. Put us down now." The pilot didn't hesitate. The helicopter dropped fast, flaring hard 50 meters from Mitchell's aircraft. Elena was moving before they touched ground, Torres and Costa right behind her. Gunfire erupted from Mitchell's helicopter. Rounds sparked off the tarmac. Elena dove behind a concrete barrier, returning fire at the door gun position where muzzle flashes were visible. "Mitchell!" she shouted. "Mitchell, sound off! Here!" His voice came from inside the helicopter, strained but alive. "Two hostiles in the cabin. They tried to restrain me. I've got one down, but the other..." Another burst of gunfire cut off his transmission. Elena didn't think. She moved. Sprinting across open tarmac while Torres and Costa provided covering fire, she closed the distance to Mitchell's helicopter in seconds that felt like minutes. Bullets cracked past her. One hit her body armor, knocking her sideways but not stopping her momentum. She reached the helicopter and vaulted through the cabin door, rifle up and ready. The scene was chaos. Mitchell had one of Hammond's operators in a chokehold while fighting off the second with his free hand. A third operator lay unmoving on the floor, blood pooling underneath him. Elena shot the second operator twice center mass. He dropped. Mitchell released the man he'd been choking, letting the unconscious body fall. He was bleeding from a cut above his eye, breathing hard but alive. "Took you long enough," he said. "You seem to have things under control." I had things extremely not under control. They waited until we were airborne, then pulled weapons and tried to restrain me. Said Hammond ordered my detention for compromising operational security. Detention was the polite version. The real order was assassination. Elena checked the unconscious operator, zip-tying his hands. "This one lives. We need prisoners who can testify against Hammond." Sanderson and his team secured the area, setting up a defensive perimeter. Morse's voice came through the radio again. "Elena Hammond just left base in a convoy. 3 vehicles heading east. She's running." "Where's the nearest roadblock?" "State police are setting one up 15 miles east, but Hammond's vehicles will reach it in 8 minutes. If she gets past them, she disappears." Elena looked at Sanderson. "Can your pilot intercept a vehicle convoy?" "Not safely. We're a transport bird, not a gunship." "I didn't ask if it was safe. I asked if it was possible." Sanderson grinned. "Hell yes, it's possible. But if we force Hammond's convoy off the road and she's killed, we better have ironclad evidence she was actually the mole." Elena held up her phone. "Morse just sent me Hammond's complete service record, classified communications logs, and financial records showing payments from a Russian intelligence front company. We've got evidence. What we need is Hammond alive to face trial." "Then let's go catch a traitor." They loaded back into the helicopter. Mitchell insisted on coming despite his injuries. "She tried to kill me twice today. I want to be there when she's arrested." The pilot pushed the Black Hawk to maximum speed, racing east to intercept Hammond's convoy. Elena could see the vehicles below, 3 black SUVs moving fast on a rural highway. "Pilot, get ahead of them. Force them to stop." The helicopter swooped low, flying directly over the convoy, and then settling into a hover 200 meters ahead, blocking the road. The SUVs screeched to a halt. "Sanderson, your team covers the front vehicle. Torres Costa, take the rear. Mitchell and I have the center vehicle. That's where Hammond will be." They fast roped down from the helicopter, hitting the ground in tactical formation. Elena approached the center SUV with her rifle raised. "Victoria Hammond, exit the vehicle with your hands visible. You're under arrest for treason, conspiracy to commit murder, and compromising classified operations." The vehicle doors opened, but instead of Hammond's 6 armed contractors emerged, weapons ready. "She's not here," one of them said. "You're chasing the wrong vehicle." Elena's blood ran cold. "It's a decoy. Hammond knew we'd intercept. She's somewhere else." Morse's voice burst through the radio, panicked. "Elena Hammond just accessed the base armory using override codes. She's got weapons, explosives, and, oh God, she's heading toward the airfield where the senators are arriving for Mitchell's classified briefing. She's going to kill them all and blame it on you." Elena was moving before Morse finished speaking, sprinting back to the helicopter. "Everyone in now. We've got maybe 10 minutes before Hammond massacres 3 United States senators and frames us for domestic terrorism." The helicopter lifted off before everyone was fully aboard. Elena's mind raced through scenarios. Hammond was cornered, exposed, desperate, and desperate people did catastrophic things. Morse, evacuate those senators now. I'm trying, but their security detail reports to Hammond. They won't listen to me. Then we're their only chance. How long until Hammond reaches the airfield? She's already there. Elena, I'm watching security feeds. She's walking into the terminal building with a duffel bag. That's not standard protocol. Whatever she's planning, it's happening right now. The helicopter couldn't fly fast enough. Elena watched the airfield approach in the distance, knowing that every second mattered. 3 senators were about to die. Hammond would detonate whatever was in that bag, kill everyone in the terminal, and disappear in the chaos while Elena took the blame. 20 years of patience, planning, and murder were about to culminate in one final catastrophic act, and Elena had maybe 5 minutes to stop it. The helicopter dropped toward the airfield with stomach-lurching speed. Elena could see the terminal building ahead, could see people moving around completely unaware of the threat walking among them. "I need this bird on the ground right now," Elena told the pilot. "Ma'am, we don't have clearance. Land the helicopter or I jump from here. Your choice." The pilot landed hard on the tarmac, 50 meters from the terminal. Elena was running before the skids touched ground, her rifle slung across her back, her sidearm in her hands. Behind her, Mitchell and the others were shouting orders, coordinating with base security, trying to lock down the terminal. But Elena knew it was already too late for lockdown procedures. Hammond was inside with explosives. The only way to stop her was direct action. Elena hit the terminal door at full speed, weapon up and tracking. Personnel scattered, shouting in confusion. Elena ignored them, scanning for Hammond. There, 50 meters ahead. Victoria Hammond, standing near the security checkpoint where the senators were being processed. The duffel bag at her feet, her hand inside her jacket. Their eyes met across the terminal. Hammond smiled. Then she pulled the detonator. Elena fired without hesitation, 2 shots in rapid succession. The first hit Hammond's hand, sending the detonator spinning through the air. The second caught her shoulder, spinning her backward away from the duffel bag. People were screaming now, civilians dropping to the floor, security personnel drawing weapons in confusion. Elena sprinted forward, closing the distance to Hammond in 3 seconds. Hammond was already moving despite the shoulder wound, diving for the detonator that had clattered against the floor. Elena hit her with a full-body tackle that drove both women into a row of chairs. They crashed through plastic seats and a tangle of limbs and violence. Hammond was 15 years younger and uninjured before the gunshot. Elena was 55 with knees that hurt and a back that complained. But Elena had spent 28 years learning how to fight people who were younger, stronger, and faster than her. Experience beat youth when it mattered most. She drove her elbow into Hammond's ribs, heard bone crack, then grabbed Hammond's wounded shoulder and squeezed. Hammond screamed, and her defensive guard dropped enough for Elena to get an arm across her throat. "It's over," Elena said through gritted teeth. "The convoy was decoys. The explosion won't happen. Mitchell's alive. You've lost." Hammond laughed, a wet sound that spoke of internal injuries. "You stupid woman. You think this was just about killing 3 senators? You think stopping me stops anything? You're the mole. You've been compromising operations for Hammond. I'm one mole. One person in a network that spans 3 intelligence agencies and has been operating since before you learned to fire a rifle. Carlson trained me. I trained 6 others. They're training more right now. You can kill me, arrest me, expose me, doesn't matter. The system continues." Elena tightened her chokehold. "Then you're going to give me their names. Every single person in your network. Every operation you've compromised. Every American you've killed. Or what? You'll kill me, I'm dead anyway. Brain tumor. Stage 4. Diagnosed 3 months ago. 6 months to live if I'm lucky." Hammond's laugh turned into a cough that sprayed blood. "Why do you think I'm here? I was supposed to die quietly, pass the network to my successor, but you had to survive that ambush. Had to start asking questions. Had to ruin 20 years of careful work." Mitchell appeared at Elena's side, weapon drawn, covering the area, while base security finally got organized. "Elena, we need to secure that bag. If it's explosive..." "It's not." Hammond's voice was weaker now, blood loss catching up with her. "It's documents, evidence, financial records, communication logs. Everything you need to dismantle the entire network." Elena went very still. "Why?" "Because you were right about one thing. I'm dying, and I'm tired. Tired of serving masters who don't care about anything except money and power. Tired of sending good people to die for causes that stopped mattering years ago." Hammond coughed again, more blood. "I was a patriot once. Did you know that Naval Academy? Top of my class. Believed in service and sacrifice and protecting America. Then I learned how the real world works. Learned that patriotism is just a tool to control people while the powerful make deals that benefit themselves. So you became a traitor. I became realistic. America doesn't exist the way you think it does, Elena. It's not good guys versus bad guys. It's just different groups fighting for control while people like us do the bleeding." Elena released the chokehold slightly. "If you're dying anyway, why bring the evidence? Why not just detonate and take everyone with you?" "Because I wanted to see your face when you realized how deep this goes. I wanted you to know that stopping me accomplishes nothing. The network continues. The compromises continue. Americans keep dying. And there's nothing you can do about it except spend the rest of your life fighting shadows." Hammond's eyes were glazing now, shock setting in. That's my revenge, not killing you, making you live with the knowledge of how thoroughly corrupted your precious system really is. Medic, Mitchell shouted. We need medical now. Don't bother, Hammond whispered. Brain tumor. Remember, I've got months at best. Let me die here. Better than wasting away in a hospital bed. Elena looked at the bag Hammond had brought. If you wanted me to have that evidence, why the detonator? Had to make it convincing. Had to make everyone think I was going to kill the senators, so security would be focused on me, not the bag. The detonator's fake. But you didn't know that when you shot me. Hammond smiled through bloody teeth. You've still got the instincts. 28 years and you still react faster than people half your age. That's why you survived when everyone else died, Elena. Not luck, not paranoia. Pure instinct and the will to do what others won't. Morse arrived with a medical team, but Hammond waved them off weakly. Listen to me, all of you. The network exists because people believe they're serving their country when they're actually serving foreign intelligence. Russian handlers, Chinese contacts, private contractors who don't care about nations. They recruit true believers, give them ideological justifications, make them think compromising American operations serves a greater good. Names, Elena demanded. Give me names. In the bag. Everything's in the bag. Financial transactions, communication protocols, safe house locations. Every member of the network I recruited or knew about. Hammond's breathing was becoming labored. But here's the thing you need to understand. Catching them doesn't matter. For every one you expose, 2 more are being recruited. The system that allows this to happen is bigger than any individual traitor. Then we fix the system. You can't. The system is designed to protect itself. Intelligence agencies value loyalty over integrity. They promote people who follow orders, not people who ask questions. Anyone who challenges the structure gets sidelined, discredited, or eliminated. You know this, Elena. You've lived it. Senator Margaret Whitfield pushed through the security cordon, her face pale but composed. Deputy Director Hammond, I'm going to ask you directly. Did you compromise the operation that sent Commander Mitchell into an ambush? Yes. Did you order the deaths of American service members over the past 20 years? Not ordered, enabled. There's a difference. I provided intelligence to hostile forces. They made their own decisions about how to use it. Senator Whitfield's voice was ice. That's a distinction without a difference. You're responsible for American deaths. So is everyone in this terminal who supported policies that put troops in impossible situations. So are contractors who profit from endless conflict. So are politicians who vote for wars they don't understand. Hammond coughed violently. I'm guilty, but I'm not alone. The entire system is guilty. Elena knelt down next to Hammond, forcing eye contact. You want redemption. Tell me everything, me. Every name, every operation, every piece of the network you can remember. Help me dismantle what you built. The bag has most of it, but I'll give you the one name that matters most. Hammond's voice was barely a whisper now. My successor, the person I trained to take over when I died. Former CIA case officer now working as a senior advisor in the National Security Council, has access to operational planning across every agency, has been positioned for 10 years to become the most dangerous intelligence asset our enemies possess. Name: Thomas Hendricks, Deputy National Security Advisor. Started working for Russian intelligence in 2015, recruited by Carlson personally. Believes he's protecting America from its own imperial overreach. Doesn't understand he's just a useful idiot serving Moscow's interests. Senator Whitfield was already on her phone, speaking rapidly in low tones. Elena knew what was happening. FBI counterintelligence would be moving on Hendricks within the hour. The entire network was about to collapse. Hammond seemed to sense it too. She smiled faintly. You win, Elena. You stop the operation. Save the senators. Expose the network. You get to be the hero everyone underestimated. I don't care about being a hero. I know. That's why you are one. You just care about the mission. About protecting people who'll never know your name. That used to be me, you know. Before cynicism and cancer and 20 years of compromises turned me into this. It doesn't have to end like this. Yes, it does. I'm dying anyway, but at least this way I die having done one thing right. I gave you the tools to dismantle what I built. That's not redemption, but maybe it's something. Medical personnel were working on Hammond now, trying to stabilize her for transport. She pushed them away weakly. Elena, listen carefully. The bag has evidence against 43 intelligence personnel across 6 agencies. Some are true believers working for foreign governments. Some are just corrupt selling access for money. Some are idealists who genuinely think they're doing the right thing. Hammond's eyes were losing focus. But the real danger isn't the individuals. It's the system that allowed us to operate for 2 decades without being caught. Until you fix that, new networks will emerge. How do we fix it? By doing what you've been doing. Question authority. Trust experience over analysis. Protect the people doing the actual work instead of the bureaucrats managing them. And most importantly, never assume age equals obsolescence. Hammond coughed one final time. I'm 57. You're 55. We both learned that lesson too late. Her eyes closed. The medical team worked frantically, but Elena could see it was futile. Victoria Hammond, former deputy director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, traitor and dying woman, seeking some final measure of redemption, was gone. Elena stood slowly, her knees protesting after the fight. Mitchell was at her side immediately. You saved 3 senators and exposed a spy network that's been operating for 20 years. That's a hell of a day's work. That's not what matters. Elena picked up the duffel bag, carefully feeling its weight. What matters is whether we can prevent this from happening again. Senator Whitfield approached her security detail, flanking her protectively. Ms. Vasquez, you have the gratitude of 3 United States senators and potentially every special operations warrior who would have walked into Hammond's compromised intelligence. We'll need complete debriefs from you and Commander Mitchell. With respect, Senator, I don't care about gratitude. I care about systemic change. Hammond was right about one thing: this network existed because our intelligence system prioritizes loyalty over integrity. Until that changes, we'll keep producing traitors. What would you suggest? Elena thought about Mitchell being dismissed as inexperienced when he questioned intelligence, about her own warnings being ignored because of her age, about 20 years of good operators dying because no one challenged analysis that contradicted field experience. Create an independent review board, former operators with actual combat experience who can evaluate intelligence assessments and challenge conclusions. Give them authority to overrule desk analysts when field indicators contradict data. And most importantly, stop sidelining people just because they're over 45 and start valuing the pattern recognition that comes from surviving situations that killed others. You're describing a significant restructuring of intelligence operations. I'm describing the difference between systems that protect themselves and systems that protect warriors. Your choice which one you want. Senator Whitfield nodded slowly. I'll introduce legislation. Can't promise it passes, but I'll fight for it. That's all anyone can do. Fight for what's right and hope it's enough. Morse appeared through the crowd, looking exhausted but relieved. Elena, the FBI has Hendricks in custody. He tried to run when agents approached, but they contained him. He's already demanding lawyers and claiming immunity. Will it stick? Not with Hammond's evidence. The financial records alone are enough to put him away for life. Add in the communications logs and operational data, and he's done. What about the rest of the network? 43 names, like Hammond said. FBI counterintelligence is executing arrests across 6 states right now. This is going to be the biggest intelligence scandal since the Cold War. Elena felt no satisfaction, just exhaustion and the weight of knowing that Hammond was right. Catching these 43 wouldn't prevent new networks from forming. The system that created them still existed. I need to see the full list, Elena said. Need to understand how deep this goes. It goes everywhere. Morse handed Elena a tablet. CIA, DIA, NSA, even FBI. Hammond and Carlson built a network across every major intelligence agency. They recruited people who believed they were serving a higher purpose while actually serving foreign interests. Elena scrolled through names, some she recognized, most she didn't. But what struck her was the pattern. Almost all of them were senior officials with decades of experience and unquestioned authority. People who'd been in the system so long they'd stopped seeing its flaws and started exploiting them. "Senator," Elena said, turning to Whitfield, "your independent review board, make sure it includes mandatory rotation. No one serves longer than 5 years. Prevent people from becoming so entrenched they think they own the system. That'll be controversial. A lot of institutional knowledge gets lost with forced rotation. And a lot of institutional corruption gets broken up. Your call, which matters more." Whitfield smiled slightly. "You don't do politics, do you?" "I do mission accomplishment. Politics is what happens when people forget the mission." Mitchell had been checking on his team, making sure Torres and Costa were accounted for. He returned with both SEALs flanking him. "Everyone's accounted for," Mitchell reported. "Webb's out of surgery and stable. Costa's shrapnel wounds are superficial. Torres and I are fine. We're ready for debriefing whenever you need us." "The debriefing can wait." Elena looked at the 3 SEALs who'd trusted her judgment when it would have been easier to dismiss her. "Right now, I need to know something. Mitchell, you're 32 years old, fast-tracked to command, bright future ahead of you. After what happened over the past 2 days, your career taking hits credibility, questioned, almost killed 3 times. Do you regret listening to the 55-year-old woman who everyone thought was obsolete?" Mitchell didn't hesitate. "I regret not listening sooner. If I'd trusted your assessment during that initial briefing, we could have avoided the ambush entirely. Webb wouldn't have been shot. We wouldn't have been pinned down. Everything that went wrong happened because I let bias override judgment." "What bias?" "Age, gender. The assumption that current technology beats field experience. Take your pick. I was wrong on all counts." Torres spoke up. "Ma'am, speaking for the team, we trusted our training and our equipment and almost died because of it. You trusted your instincts and saved our lives. That's a lesson we won't forget." Costa nodded agreement. "Next operation, if someone with your experience tells me something feels wrong, I'm listening regardless of what intelligence says." Elena felt something loosen in her chest. Not satisfaction exactly, more like validation that the fight had been worth it. "That's good," she said quietly, "because the next generation of operators needs to learn what ours learned too slowly. Data can be manipulated, technology can fail, but instinct developed through survived experience is the most reliable intelligence asset we have." Senator Whitfield was taking notes. "That's going into my testimony when I defend the restructuring. The military-industrial complex won't like it, but I've got 3 senators who just survived an assassination attempt. We've got political capital to burn. Use it well. Use it to protect the people who do the actual fighting instead of the bureaucrats who manage them from safe distance." Whitfield extended her hand. "Ms. Vasquez, I want you to testify before the Intelligence Committee. Your experience, your insights, and frankly, your survival of 3 separate compromised operations makes you the most credible voice we have for reform." Elena shook her hand. "I'll testify, but I won't be polite. I'll tell the truth about how thoroughly broken the system is, and how many good people died because no one wanted to challenge authority. I wouldn't expect anything less." The debriefing took 14 hours, spread across 3 days. Elena walked senators, FBI agents, and military investigators through every detail of Operation Sandstorm Syria 2013 and Mitchell's compromised operation. She explained how she'd recognized the pattern, how Hammond's network had operated, and how systemic flaws in intelligence assessment had enabled 20 years of treason. The response was exactly what Elena expected. Some officials took it seriously. Others dismissed her as a paranoid veteran manufacturing conspiracies. The typical split between people who valued field experience and people who trusted systems. But 3 senators listened. 3 senators who'd nearly been killed by the system's failure. That was enough to force change. 6 months after the terminal incident, Elena stood in a small Pentagon briefing room with 23 former Special Operations personnel. The new Independent Intelligence Review Board had been established, staffed entirely by operators with combat experience who'd survived situations where intelligence failed. Their mandate was simple: Review every Special Operations Intelligence assessment before it reached operational commanders. Challenge conclusions that contradicted field indicators. Provide a second opinion based on survival experience rather than data analysis. Elena had been appointed as senior advisor, though she'd refused a permanent position. She had other work to do. The congressional testimony had been brutal. 8 hours of questioning by senators who ranged from supportive to openly hostile. Some wanted to hear her story. Others wanted to discredit her as a traumatized veteran whose judgment couldn't be trusted. She'd stood there 55 years old with arthritis in her knees and told them the truth. Told them about Sandstorm, about Syria, about Mitchell's operation, about Hammond's network, and how it had operated for 2 decades, about the systemic flaws that prioritized loyalty over competence. Some senators listened, many didn't. But the ones who did had enough power to force changes. The Intelligence Authorization Act now included provisions for independent review, mandatory rotation of senior intelligence personnel, and protection for operators who challenged assessments. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Mitchell had been promoted to lieutenant commander and assigned to lead training for the new review protocols. His testimony about how Elena's experience had saved his team had carried weight with military commanders who understood the difference between theory and practice. Webb had recovered fully and returned to active duty. Costa and Torres were operating with a new SEAL team, carrying forward the lessons about trusting experience over technology. Hammond's network had been dismantled. 43 arrests. 27 convictions so far. Hendricks had been sentenced to 40 years for espionage. Others had taken deals providing testimony that exposed even more corruption. But Elena knew Hammond had been right about one thing. The individuals might be gone, but the system that enabled them still existed. Changing culture took longer than catching traitors. 8 months after the terminal incident, Elena received a call from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but instinct made her pick up. "Vasquez," she said. "Miss Vasquez, this is Captain Sarah Chen, Naval Special Warfare Command. I'm calling about a situation that's developed with one of our SEAL teams operating overseas. The intelligence assessment seems solid, but something feels wrong to the team leader. He's requesting additional review before proceeding. Your name came up as someone who might be able to evaluate the operation." Elena smiled slightly. The new protocols were working. Operators were questioning assessments, asking for second opinions, trusting instinct. "Send me everything you have. I'll review within 2 hours." "Thank you, ma'am." The team leader said if anyone could spot a problem, it would be the woman who saved Commander Mitchell's team. After she hung up, Elena opened her laptop and reviewed the files Chen had sent. Intelligence assessment for a reconnaissance operation in North Africa. Solid data, multiple source verification. Everything checked out according to standard protocols. But Elena had survived 3 ambushes by recognizing patterns that analysis missed. She studied the terrain analysis, the enemy position reports, the movement timelines, and there, subtle, almost invisible, was the pattern she'd learned to recognize. High ground positions with clear fields of fire, limited American cover, intelligence that underestimated enemy capability. Someone was using Hammond's playbook again, a new mole or a remnant of the old network. Either way, a SEAL team was about to walk into an ambush if Elena didn't intervene. She picked up the phone and called Chen back. "The operation is compromised. Don't ask me how I know. Just trust that I've seen this pattern before, and it always ends with American casualties. Recommend abort and complete intelligence review." There was a pause. Then Chen responded. "Ma'am, that's going to be controversial. The assessment went through multiple review layers. So did the assessment that sent Mitchell's team into an ambush. So did the one that killed 4 of my teammates in Afghanistan. Trust experience over analysis, Captain. That's why the new protocols exist." Another pause. "Understood. I'll recommend abort to the operational commander. And ma'am, thank you." Elena ended the call and sat back in her chair. Somewhere overseas, a SEAL team was getting stood down from an operation that would have killed them. They'd never know why. Would never learn that a 55-year-old retired operator had recognized a threat they couldn't see. That was fine. Elena had never needed recognition, just results. Just the knowledge that good people went home alive to their families because someone was watching over them, making the hard calls, trusting the instincts that came from surviving what others didn't. 10 months after the terminal incident, Elena received a formal invitation to address the graduating class at Naval Special Warfare Training. Mitchell had arranged it, pulling strings with command to get approval. She stood in front of 200 young operators, most of them under 30, all of them eager and confident and absolutely certain they knew what combat would be like. "I'm 55 years old," Elena began. "When I started special operations training, most of you weren't born yet. Some of your parents weren't born yet. You're looking at me wondering what someone my age could possibly teach you about modern warfare." She paused, letting that sink in. "Here's what I can teach you. Intelligence fails. Technology fails. Data analysis fails. What doesn't fail is instinct developed through survived experience. What doesn't fail is the pattern recognition that comes from seeing threats before they materialize. What doesn't fail is the willingness to question authority when something feels wrong." She told them about Sandstorm, about Syria, about Mitchell's operation, about Hammond's network, and how it had killed Americans for 20 years because no one challenged the system. "You're going to be deployed to hostile environments with intelligence assessments that seem solid. You're going to trust that intelligence because that's what you've been trained to do. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes that intelligence will be wrong. Deliberately wrong. Someone will have compromised it to get you killed." She had their full attention now. Every operator in the room understood they were hearing something that could save their lives. "So here's my advice. When something feels wrong, trust that feeling. When terrain looks like an ambush position, assume it is. When intelligence seems too clean, question it. And most importantly, when someone with experience tells you they've seen this pattern before, listen to them regardless of their age or rank or whether they fit your image of what an operator should look like." She looked directly at Mitchell, who was standing at the back of the room with Torres and Costa. "Commander Mitchell ignored my warning and almost got his team killed. Then he listened, and his team survived. The difference between those two outcomes was whether he valued current analysis or survived experience. That's the choice you'll all face eventually. Choose wisely." The questions came rapid fire after that. How do you develop instinct? How do you know when to trust it? How do you challenge authority without destroying your career? Elena answered honestly. You develop instinct by surviving situations that kill other people. You know to trust it when data contradicts what your gut is telling you. You challenge authority by being right often enough that people start listening despite their bias. When the session ended, dozens of young operators approached asking for more details, wanting to learn from someone who'd survived what they were preparing to face. Mitchell waited until the crowd cleared before approaching. "That was one hell of a speech," he said. It was the truth. Whether they believe it depends on whether they survive their first compromised operation. Some of them will remember. That's all we can do, plant seeds and hope they grow. Elena nodded. "How's your team?" "Webb's back to full duty. Costa and Torres are instructing here now, teaching the next generation. Everyone survived and came home whole. Because of you. Because I was paranoid and experienced enough to recognize a pattern. That's not heroism. That's just survival instinct applied at operational scale. It's more than that, and you know it. You fought the entire system, intelligence, command, chain of command, political pressure to protect people you didn't know. That's exactly what special operations is supposed to be about." Elena smiled. "You're learning, Commander. Give it another 20 years and you'll be as paranoid as me." "I'm already getting there. Last week I questioned an intelligence assessment that seemed too convenient. Turns out it was solid, but my team leader appreciated that I asked, said it showed good judgment to verify. That's the culture change we need. Questioning becomes standard practice instead of career suicide." They walked together toward the exit, two operators separated by 23 years and united by shared understanding of how close they'd both come to dying because systems failed. "What's next for you?" Mitchell asked. "More reviews, more operations that need a second opinion, more young commanders who need someone paranoid enough to recognize patterns they can't see yet. You ever think about retiring for real? You've earned it." I'll retire when there's no one left who needs protecting. Until then, I keep working. They reached the parking area where Mitchell's team was waiting. Webb, walking without a limp, now grinned when he saw Elena. Ma'am, the team wanted to say thank you properly. We're having dinner tonight. Steak, beer, terrible stories. You're invited. I don't need thanks. Wasn't asking. You saved our lives. You're having dinner with us. That's an order from your grateful seals. Elena laughed. All right, but I picked the restaurant. You kids probably don't know what good steak actually tastes like. "16 months after the terminal incident, the Intelligence Committee released its final report on Hammond's network. 43 arrests, 31 convictions, estimated 15 American deaths prevented by the network's dismantling, systemic reforms implemented across 6 agencies. Elena read the report in her small apartment, noting what it got right and what it missed. The arrests were real. The reforms were real. But the cultural change that would prevent new networks from forming that was still aspirational. Her phone rang. Senator Whitfield. Elena, the committee wants to give you a formal commendation, recognition for exposing the network and preventing the terminal attack. I don't need recognition. I know. But the young operators you're training need to see that challenging authority gets rewarded, not punished. Let us recognize you so they know there's protection for doing the right thing. Elena thought about that. About how many operators had stayed silent over the years because they feared career consequences. About how many had died because no one wanted to be the person who questioned authority. All right, but I want Mitchell and his team recognized too. They trusted field experience over analysis and survived because of it. That's the behavior we need to reward. Done. Ceremony is next month. Formal attire required. I don't own formal attire. Then buy some. You're getting a medal whether you like it or not. Elena hung up smiling. She didn't care about medals. But if it helped change culture, if it showed young operators that experience mattered and questioning was valued, then she'd wear whatever formal attire they required. The ceremony was held in the Pentagon, attended by senior military leadership, intelligence officials, and the 3 senators who'd nearly died in that terminal. Elena stood in formal dress uniform she'd borrowed from a friend, feeling profoundly uncomfortable with the attention. The citation read well. Distinguished service in exposing intelligence compromise. Extraordinary valor in preventing terrorist attack. Exceptional dedication to protecting American warriors. What it didn't say was that Elena had spent 28 years being dismissed, sidelined, and underestimated because of her age and gender. That she'd survived 3 ambushes that killed others. That she'd fought the entire intelligence establishment to protect 1 SEAL team. Mitchell stood beside her, receiving his own commendation. Webb, Torres, and Costa were there too, decorated for their role in stopping Hammond's network. When Elena's turn came to speak, she kept it brief. I'm not here because I'm exceptional. I'm here because I survived situations that killed people who were younger, faster, and stronger than me. I survived by trusting instinct over analysis, by questioning authority when something felt wrong, and by refusing to let age or bias determine what I was capable of accomplishing. She looked out at the audience of senior officers and officials. If you want to honor me, don't give me medals. Change the system that made my intervention necessary. Value experience. Question assumptions. Trust the people doing the actual fighting when they tell you something feels wrong. And stop sidelining operators just because they've been doing this long enough to recognize patterns you can't see from your desk. The room was silent when she finished. Some faces showed agreement. Others showed offense. Elena didn't care. She'd spoken truth to power and let them decide what to do with it. After the ceremony, Morse approached with someone Elena didn't recognize, a woman in her late 40s, wearing civilian clothes but carrying herself with military bearing. Elena, this is Director Catherine Vance. She's taking over the restructured Intelligence Assessment Division. Vance extended her hand. Ms. Vasquez, I've read your testimony and reviewed your operational history. I want to offer you a position as Senior Field Advisor. You'd review assessments, mentor analysts, and provide operational perspective to prevent future compromises. I'm 55 years old with arthritis and a bad back. You want me mentoring analysts. I want you showing analysts what 28 years of survived experience looks like. Most of them are brilliant with data, but they've never been shot at. They need someone who can explain the difference between theoretical risk and actual danger. Elena considered that. It was exactly the kind of systemic change she'd been advocating for, putting field experience into the assessment process at the front end instead of waiting for operations to fail. I'll do it on 3 conditions. 1, I have authority to overrule assessments that contradict field indicators. 2, I'm not bound by political considerations when I provide recommendations. 3, I can bring in other experienced operators for specialized reviews. Vance didn't hesitate. Done. All 3. When can you start? Tomorrow. There are probably a dozen operations in planning right now that need someone paranoid enough to spot problems. They shook hands. Elena had spent her career operating in shadows, protecting people who'd never know her name. Now she'd be doing the same work in conference rooms and assessment centers. Different environment, same mission. Mitchell caught up with her as she was leaving. You took the job, he said. How'd you know? Because you care too much to walk away when there's still work to do. Same reason you charged into that ambush to save my team. Same reason you fought Hammond's network despite the personal cost. I'm just doing what needs doing. That's what makes you dangerous. You don't care about career or recognition. You just care about the mission. People like you change systems because you're willing to burn everything down to protect what matters. Elena smiled. That's the nicest thing anyone's called me this week. Dangerous and willing to burn things down. It's what the next generation needs. Someone who won't compromise on principles just to make bureaucrats comfortable. They walked out together into the gray Washington afternoon. Somewhere, special operations teams were planning missions based on intelligence assessments. Some of those assessments would be solid. Some would be compromised. Elena's job was to spot the difference before good people died. It was the same mission she'd been executing for 28 years. Just a different battlefield. 2 years after the terminal incident, Elena stood in another briefing room reviewing intelligence for a SEAL operation in Southeast Asia. The assessment looked solid. Multiple sources, clear objectives, minimal risk. But Elena had learned to trust what intelligence didn't say as much as what it did. This assessment made no mention of local militia movements, no analysis of terrain advantages, no consideration of how enemy forces might use the environment. She picked up the phone and called the operational commander. This is Elena Vasquez. I've reviewed your assessment and I need to ask some questions before I approve it. The commander, a young lieutenant colonel she'd never met, responded with immediate respect. Ma'am, what concerns you? The terrain analysis is incomplete. You're planning to cross a valley system that offers perfect ambush positions. Your assessment doesn't address how you'll mitigate that risk. Intel says enemy presence is minimal in that sector. Intel said that about Commander Mitchell's operation too. He walked into an ambush that nearly killed his entire team. I'm not signing off on this until you provide detailed terrain analysis and contingency plans for ambush scenarios. There was a pause. Then the lieutenant colonel said something that made Elena smile. Ma'am, I've read the case studies about your operations. If you say something's wrong, I believe you. Give me 48 hours to rework the plan with better terrain considerations. You've got it. And Lieutenant Colonel, thank you for trusting experience over expediency. That's how you bring your people home alive. She hung up feeling something close to satisfaction. The culture was changing. Slowly, but changing. Young commanders were learning to question assessments, trust field indicators, and value the wisdom that came from surviving what others hadn't. That evening, Elena received a message from Mitchell. He'd been promoted to commander and assigned to lead a new SEAL task force focused on high-risk operations. His team included Webb Torres and Costa, all promoted, all carrying forward the lessons from that ambush 2 years ago. The message read, heading out tomorrow on operation you reviewed last week. Terrain analysis helped us identify 3 potential ambush positions and plan accordingly. Whatever happens out there, we're going in prepared because someone gave a damn enough to ask hard questions. Thank you for being that someone. Elena didn't respond immediately. She looked out her window at the Washington skyline, thinking about all the operations happening right now, all the warriors preparing to enter hostile territory, all the families hoping their loved ones came home alive. She couldn't protect them all. couldn't review every assessment, couldn't prevent every compromise, couldn't save everyone who needed saving. But she could keep fighting the good fight. Keep questioning authority. Keep trusting instinct over data when survival demanded it. Keep being the paranoid voice that recognized patterns others missed. She typed a response to Mitchell. "Come home alive, Commander. That's all that matters." 3 days later, Mitchell's team completed their operation successfully. 0 casualties. Mission accomplished. Another group of American warriors who'd survived because someone asked the right questions before they walked into danger. Elena marked it as another small victory in a war that never truly ended. The fight to protect warriors from their own systems. The fight to value experience over politics. The fight to ensure that age and wisdom weren't discarded in favor of youth and technology. She was 57 now. Her knees hurt worse. Her back complained more frequently. She couldn't run like she used to or fight like she once had. But she could still recognize an ambush before it happened. Could still read terrain that told stories intelligence missed. Could still trust the instincts that 28 years of survival had carved into her bones. And as long as American warriors needed someone watching over them from the shadows, making impossible calls, and trusting impossible instincts, Elena Vasquez would keep doing what she'd always done. Not for recognition, not for medals, not for glory or credit or public acknowledgement, just for the mission, just for the knowledge that somewhere someone came home alive because an old woman refused to let age or bias or bureaucratic pressure determine what she was capable of accomplishing. That was enough. That would always be enough. The work continued.